Beneath the epic tales of gods and heroes lies the heartbeat of ancient Greece, ordinary lives that wove the fabric of a civilization. From Theseus' trade routes to Hephaestus' forges, discover how farmers, weavers, and runners turned myths into reality, their daily labors shaping the world we celebrate in legend. Dive into the untold stories of grit and ingenuity that built an empire, one thread, tool, and step at a time. The Minoan labyrinth. Architectural ingenuity in Bronze Age Crete. You settle into the quiet of the evening. Imagine yourself wandering the sun-baked hills of ancient Crete, where the sea whispers secrets to the olive groves and the wind carries echoes of a civilization long faded into dust. This is the world of the Minoans, a people whose ingenuity shaped the Mediterranean landscape around 2000 BCE, long before the grand temples of classical Greece rose. Their story isn't one of dramatic conquests or fiery gods descending from Olympus, but rather the patient, methodical labor of builders who turned stone and clay into structures that baffled the world. At the heart of this tale lies the Palace of Knossos, often called the Labyrinth in later myths, sprawling complex that wasn't born from divine whims, but from the practical needs of a thriving society. Picture yourself as a humble architect. In this era, your hands calloused from handling rough-hewn blocks of gypsum and limestone. The Minoans, descendants of Neolithic farmers who migrated to Crete around 7000 BCE, had evolved into master planners by the Middle Bronze Age. Their society revolved around palatial centers like Naissus, Phaistos, and Malea, which served as administrative hubs, storage facilities, and communal gathering places. These weren't mere fortresses. They were intricate networks of rooms, corridors, and courtyards designed to manage the island's resources efficiently. You might start your day at dawn, surveying the site where the palace would expand, measuring plots with knotted ropes and aligning walls to the cardinal directions using simple astronomical observation stars like Sirius guiding your plumb lines. The labyrinth myth, later woven by Greek storytellers, likely drew from the bewildering layout of Knossos, excavated by Sir Arthur Evans in the early 20th century. The site reveals over 1,300 rooms connected by winding passages, staircases that twist like serpents, and light wells that pierce the multi-story edifice. But in reality, this complexity arose from necessity. Crete's economy depended on agriculture, wheat, barley, figs, and olives stored in vast pythoi jars that could hold hundreds of liters. As a builder, you'd oversee the installation of these storage areas, ensuring they were cool and dry, protected from earthquakes that frequently rattled the island. The Minoans ingeniously incorporated flexible wooden beams into their walls, a precursor to modern seismic engineering, allowing structures to sway rather than crumble. Daily life here was a tapestry of routine tasks that sustained this architectural marvel. Artisans like you would mix lime plaster for frescoes depicting serene scenes of bulls and lilies, not for glory, but to brighten dim interiors and perhaps invoke fertility rites tied to their bull-leaping rituals. These paintings, preserved in fragments, show a society at ease with nature, where women in flounced skirts participated equally in ceremonies. Trade was the lifeblood. Minoan ships carried saffron, wine, and pottery to Egypt and the Cyclades, bringing back copper and tin for bronze tools. You'd haggle with merchants in the palace's west court, recording transactions on clay tablets in linear, a scripta writing system still undeciphered, hiding mundane inventories of grain and wool. Yet, beneath this orderly facade lay the seeds of vulnerability. The palace's design, with its open courtyards and lack of defensive walls, reflected a confidence in naval power rather than fortifications. As you lay out another corridor, you might ponder the island's isolation, a sword that fostered innovation but invited envy from mainland powers. Archaeological evidence suggests Knossos was rebuilt multiple times after destructions, perhaps by fires, invasions, or the cataclysmic Thera eruption around 1600 BCE, which blanketed Crete in ash and disrupted agriculture for generations. The human element in this story emerges in the overlooked figures, the laborers who quarried stone from nearby hills, hauling it on sledges lubricated with water. The potters shaping vessels for everyday use. The farmers whose surpluses funded these grand projects. Their resilience shines through in the continuity of Minoan culture, adapting to environmental shifts like prolonged droughts evidenced by pollen records. One such figure might be an overseer named in a faded inscription, coordinating teams to install drainage systems, sophisticated clay pipes that channeled rainwater away, preventing floods in the humid Cretan climate. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows over the unfinished wings of the palace, you can't help but wonder what hidden pressures were building within this intricate web of rooms and rituals, threatening to unravel the very foundations of Minoan supremacy. As you walk the half-finished corridors of Knossos, the air thick with the scent of drying plaster and olive oil lamps, you sense the pulse of a civilization at its zenith. The Minoans, around 1800 BCE, were not just builders, but orchestrators of a complex society where every stone and storage jar played a role in their prosperity. The palace, far from being a mere residence for kings, was a bureaucratic machine, its rooms filled with scribes tallying grain and wine on clay tablets. You might pause by a workshop where potters knead clay, their hands shaping vessels that will sail to distant shores, carrying Crete's reputation as far as the Nile Delta. These artisans, often unnamed in history, were the backbone of an economy that thrived on precision and surplus. The labyrinthine layout of Knossos, with its maze-like passages, wasn't designed to confuse, but to compartmentalize. Each section served a purpose: granaries for barley, magazines for oil, sanctuaries for rituals. As a planner, you'd marvel at the foresight in its drainage system's terracotta pipes sloped to carry runoff, a marvel rivaling modern plumbing. These practical innovations reveal a people obsessed with control over their environment, from redirecting streams to cultivating vineyards on terraced hills. Pollen records from Crete show a shift toward olive and grape monoculture, suggesting intensive farming to fuel trade. This wasn't glamorous work. It meant long days for farmers under the Mediterranean sun, their hands stained with soil and sap, ensuring the palace's wealth. Yet, the human stories behind these walls are what ground this history. Imagine a woman named Irene, a weaver whose intricate textiles adorned the palace's elite. Her patterns, inspired by the seas, waves, and the island's flora, were traded alongside pottery fetching high prices in foreign markets. Or consider the laborers, men and women from nearby villages, who hauled limestone from quarries near Mount Juctus, their sledges creaking under the weight. Their lives were tied to the palace's rhythm, rising with dawn to mix mortar or repair walls damaged by quakes. Archaeological finds, like worn tools and skeletal remains showing signs of repetitive labor, hint at their endurance, their bodies bearing the cost of Nasus grandeur. The Minoans' reliance on trade made them vulnerable, though you'd overhear merchants in the central court discussing ships delayed by storms, a reminder of Poseidon's unpredictable wrath in myth. Crete's naval dominance, built on sturdy cedar ships, secured trade routes but couldn't shield the island from nature's fury. The Thera eruption, dated to around 1600 BCE, looms large in this story. Ash layers found in Cretan soil suggest crops failed for years, straining the palace's stores. Some scholars argue this disaster weakened Nasus, making it ripe for external pressures, perhaps from Mycenaean Greeks, whose pottery begins appearing in later layers. Social dynamics also simmered beneath the surface. The palace's frescoes depict equality in ritual, men and women side by side in processions. But clay tablets hint at hierarchies. Overseers, likely male elites, controlled labor and resources, while workers like Iran had little say. This tension, subtle but present, raises questions about the palace's stability. As you trace a finger along a fresco of a leaping bull, you wonder, could the very systems that built Nasus, its trade, its labor, its ambition, be sowing the seeds of its decline? You stand in the central courtyard of Nasus, the palace, now a sprawling testament to Minoan ambition, its walls vibrant with frescoes, yet scarred by time and tremors. By 1450 BCE, the Minoan world teeters on the edge of collapse, its intricate systems strained by forces both natural and human. The labyrinth, once a symbol of order, now feels like a trap, its corridors echoing with the footsteps of a civilization facing its twilight. As you survey the bustling court, merchants bartering, priests conducting rites, you sense the fragility beneath the surface. A society unaware of the fault lines threatening to crack its foundations. The Thera eruption, likely a century earlier, left lasting wounds. Excavations reveal ash deposits that choked fields, reducing harvests and forcing reliance on dwindling stores. You might imagine a farmer, his face weathered, staring at barren olive groves, knowing his family's survival hangs by a thread. The palace, once a hub of surplus, now rationed goods, as evidenced by smaller storage jars in later archaeological layers. Trade, the Minoans' lifeline, faltered as partners like Egypt turned inward, their own economies strained. Nasus, open design, lacking fortifications, reflects a fatal trust in naval power, but ships couldn't fend off hunger or invaders. Enter the Mycenaeans, mainland Greeks, whose presence grows stronger in Crete's later years. Their pottery, coarser, less vibrant, replaces Minoan styles in Nasus ruins, and Linear B, their script, overtakes Linear A. You might picture a Mycenaean overseer inspecting the palace's stores, his presence a quiet assertion of dominance. Scholars debate whether this was conquest or assimilation, but the shift is undeniable. The palace burned around 1375 BCE, its charred beams and shattered frescoes suggesting fire, perhaps deliberate, perhaps accidental. The laborers, like those who built these walls, likely fled or adapted, their stories lost in the Ashdod. Yet the Minoan's resilience shines through, even in decline. Communities outside Nasus, in villages like Gornia, persisted, rebuilding simpler homes and maintaining small-scale trade. Women like Erin the weaver might have taught their craft to daughters, preserving patterns that echo in later Greek textiles. The labyrinth's legacy, too, endured, morphing into myth. Later Greeks, awed by Nasus ruins, spun tales of Theseus and the Minotaur, turning bureaucratic complexity into a heroic saga. This transformation reflects a human need to find meaning in the mundane, to see destiny in daily labor. The story teaches us that grandeur often rests on fragile foundations. Their innovation, seismic-resistant walls, advanced plumbing, intricate trade networks were remarkable, yet vulnerable to nature's whims and human ambition. Today, we marvel at Nasus ruins, but we're reminded that progress demands adaptability. Modern cities, like ancient palaces, rely on systems, supply chains, infrastructure that can falter under pressure. The Minoans' fall, driven by environmental and social shifts, mirrors challenges we face: climate change, resource scarcity, cultural transitions. Their legacy lies not in invincibility, but in their ability to build, rebuild, and endure through ordinary acts of survival. As you leave the courtyard, the stars above Crete twinkle as they did millennia ago, guiding builders who aligned these walls. The labyrinth is silent now, but its echoes ask, what lessons can we draw from a people who built marvels only to see them crumble? Daedalus craft, the mundane tools of ancient inventors as you step into the dusty workshop of a Cretan artisan around 1800 BCE. The air hums with the rhythm of chisels striking wood and the faint clink of bronze against stone. This is the world of the craftsman, a figure immortalized in myth as Daedalus, the ingenious inventor of the Minoan labyrinth. But strip away the legends of wings and monsters, and you find a man grounded in the ordinary tools and techniques that defined Bronze Age Crete. His story isn't one of divine inspiration, but of relentless problem-solving, using the materials at hand to shape a civilization's ambitions. You're not in a grand palace now, but in a modest workspace near Nasus, where the real work of innovation unfolds through sweat and ingenuity. Imagine yourself as one of these craftsmen, your hands gripping a bronze adze, its edge worn from shaping cedar beams. The Minoans, thriving in the Middle Bronze Age, relied on tools that were deceptively simple, yet revolutionary for their time. Archaeological finds from sites like Malea and Phaistos reveal an array of implements: double axes for felling trees, chisels for carving stone, and awls for piercing leather. These tools, forged from copper and tin imported from Cyprus and Anatolia, were the backbone of Minoan construction. You'd spend hours smelting or in a clay furnace, the heat blistering your skin, to produce a single blade strong enough to cut limestone for palace walls. The workshop is a hive of activity, but not of chaos. You work alongside potters spinning clay on wheels, their vessels destined for oil or wine storage, and weavers threading looms with flax grown in Crete's fertile valleys. Every tool tells a story of adaptation. Take the bow drill, a device you'd use to bore holes in wood or stone. Its cord, twisted around a wooden shaft, spins with a flick of your wrist, a technique borrowed from Egyptian artisans, but refined here. Such tools enabled the Minoans to craft intricate wooden frames for seismic-resistant buildings, a necessity on an island prone to earthquakes. Excavations at Nasus show mortise-and tenon joints, evidence of precise carpentry that rivaled modern methods. Life as a craftsman was grueling yet vital. Your days begin at dawn, hauling timber from Crete's hills or mixing plaster for Fusco's skeletal remains from Minoan cemeteries show signs of arthritis in artisans' hands, a testament to repetitive tasks. Yet, your work supports the palace economy, turning raw materials into goods for trade with Egypt and the Cyclades. A single bronze saw, its teeth painstakingly filed, could mean the difference between a merchant's profit and loss. You might overhear traders in the nearby market bartering your tools for saffron or obsidian, their voices blending with the bleating of goats. But innovation breeds risk. The demand for tools strains Crete's resources as forests dwindle and trade routes falter. You notice the bronze supply growing erratic, perhaps due to distant conflicts in Anatolia. As you sharpen a chisel under the fading light, a question lingers. Could the very tools that built Minoan greatness also expose its vulnerabilities? You're back in the workshop, the scent of cedar shavings and molten bronze filling your lungs as you labor under the Cretan sun. Circa 1700 BCE, the figure of Daedalus, less a singular genius and more a symbol of countless unnamed artisans, looms large in your mind. These craftsmen didn't chase fame, they chased utility, crafting tools that turned Crete into a hub of trade and architecture. As you hammer a bronze blade, you're part of a chain of labor that stretches from quarry to palace, each tool a small but critical cog in the Minoan machine. Yet, the weight of this work presses on you, hinting at cracks in the system that sustains it. The tools you wield are marvels of practicality. Consider the double axe, or labyrinth, its symmetrical blades gleaming in the firelight, found in sanctuaries and workshops. It wasn't just a tool, but a cultural symbol etched into pottery and stone. You'd use it to fell trees or shape beams, its weight balanced for efficiency. Crafting such a tool required precision. You'd cast molten bronze in clay molds, cooling them in water to harden the metal. Excavations at Zakros reveal furnaces and slag heaps, signs of a proto-industrial process that demanded constant fuel charcoal from Crete's shrinking forests. Deforestation, evidenced by pollen records, was already thinning the island's woodlands, forcing reliance on imported timber. Your fellow artisans add depth to this story. There's Kydos, a metalworker whose hands bear scars from forging chisels, and Moraine, a potter whose steady fingers shape jars for olive oil. Their lives are tethered to the palace, where overseers demand ever more tools to support Nasus' expansion. You might spend evenings repairing worn drills or teaching apprentices to carve stone with flint scrapers, a skill passed down through generations. These apprentices, often children from nearby villages, show signs of malnutrition in their bones, as revealed by archaeological studies. A reminder that prosperity didn't reach everyone equally. Trade underpinned this craft. you'd see merchants arrive with tin from distant Anatolia, a metal scarce in Crete but essential for bronze. In return, your tools, saws, ADSs, and chisels traveled to Egypt, where they were prized for cutting sandstone. But trade was fragile. Storms could sink ships, and tensions with mainland Mycenaeans, whose pottery appears in later Minoan sites, hint at growing competition. The Thera eruption, around 1600 BCE, further disrupted supply chains, burying ports in ash and choking trade routes. You'd feel the ripple effects in the workshop: fewer orders, tighter rations, anxious whispers about failing crops. The human cost of innovation emerges in quiet moments. Long hours, hunched over an anvil, leave your back aching, and the constant demand for output breeds tension. Some artisans, like Kaido's hoard bronze scraps, wary of shortages. Others, like Myrene, barter their wares for food as palace distributions falter. The tools you craft are lifelines, yet they tie you to a system teetering on scarcity. As you polish a newly forged axe, its edge catching the torchlight, you can't shake a nagging thought. How long can this delicate balance of craft and commerce hold before it frays? The workshop grows quiet now, the fires dimming as twilight settles over Crete. Around 1450 BCE, stand among scattered tools, bronze chisels, worn drills, a half-finished axe each, a testament to the ingenuity that built the Minoan world. But the air feels heavy, charged with the unease of a civilization unraveling. The figure of Daedalus, mythologized as a lone genius, fades into the reality of countless artisans whose tools shaped palaces and ships but couldn't stave off decline. As you sweep the workshop floor, you sense the end of an era. The tools you crafted, both a triumph and a burden. The Minoans' downfall was no single catastrophe, but a slow erosion. The Thera eruption, a century earlier, had crippled agriculture, with ash layers in soil samples showing years of failed harvests. Your tools, once used to build storehouses for surplus, now carve leaner structures as resources dwindle. Bronze, the lifeblood of your craft, grows scarce. Trade with Anatolia falters as Mycenaean Greeks assert dominance. Their coarser pottery, found in Knossos' final layers, signals a shift. You might imagine a Mycenaean trader inspecting your work, his presence a quiet omen of takeover. By 1375 BCE, Knossos burns, whether by invasion, rebellion, or accident. The charred beams tell no clear tale. Yet the artisan's resilience shines through. You picture Myrene, the potter, adapting her craft to simpler forms. Her jars still traded in coastal villages. Kaidos, the metalworker, might salvage bronze scraps to forge smaller tools, bartering them for grain. Archaeological evidence from sites like Gornia shows smaller settlements persisting, their inhabitants using Minoan tools to rebuild modest homes. These tools, axes, drills, saws, outlasted the palaces, their designs influencing Mycenaean craftsmanship. The labyrinth, once a Minoan hallmark, appears in later Greek art, a symbol of continuity amid change. The myth of Daedalus, with his wings and labyrinth, grew from this reality. Later Greeks and structures they found, turning mundane ingenuity into legend. A bronze saw became a hero's weapon, a complex palace, a monster's maze. This transformation reflects humanity's urge to elevate the ordinary. to find wonder in the grind of daily labor. Your work, though forgotten in name, lives on in these stories etched into the cultural memory of Greece. The legacy of these craftsmen speaks to us today. Their tools, born of necessity, show how innovation arises from constraint bronze, forged in small furnaces, wood-shaped with simple drills. Modern technology, from skyscrapers to microchips, owes a debt to such incremental advances. Yet, their story warns of fragility. Systems built on finite resources, like Crete's forests or tin supplies, can collapse under pressure. As we face our own challenges, resource scarcity, climate shifts, we might learn from these artisans' adaptability, their ability to create with what's at hand. As you set down your tools, the workshop now silent under a starlit sky, you reflect on the hands that shaped a civilization. The tools remain, scattered in museums, their edges dulled, but their story sharp. What might we build with the tools we're given, and what will endure when our own works turn to dust? Theseus' journey, trade routes disguised as heroic quest says. You stand on the rocky shores of Attica, around 1400 BCE. The Aegean Sea stretches before you, its waves lapping at a wooden ship laden with amphorae of olive oil and wool. The myth of Theseus, the hero who sailed to Crete to slay the Minotaur, captures the imagination with tales of bravery. But beneath this legend lies a quieter truth. The intricate web of trade routes that bound the Aegean world. You are a merchant sailor, not a hero. Your life tied to the currents and stars that guide vessels from Athens to Crete and beyond. This is no epic quest, but a daily grind of navigation, barter, and survival that fueled the Bronze Age economy. Picture yourself aboard a sturdy ship, its cedar planks sealed with pitch, built in the shipyards of Piraeus. The Minoans, and later the Mycenaeans, mastered these waters, their vessels carrying goods across the Cyclades to Egypt and the Levant. Cargo jars of wine, bundles of dyed cloth, bronze tools flex the wealth of Attica's hills and workshops. Navigation is an art of patience. You rely on the stars, like the constellation Argo, to plot your course, and coastal landmarks, like Cape Sunian's cliffs, to avoid reefs. Archaeological finds, such as shipwrecks off Aluburan, reveal the diversity of trade. Copper ingots from Cyprus, amber from the Baltic, even ostrich eggs from Africa. Your journey mirrors Theseus' mythic voyage, but it's grounded in routine. You sail to Crete's port of Kamos, where Minoan warehouses brim with grain and pottery. The palace at Knossos, a hub of commerce, draws merchants like you to its bustling courts. You'd haggle with traders, exchanging your goods for Cretan saffron or obsidian, your voice mingling with the cries of gulls and the clink of clay tablets recording deals in linear B. These tablets, found in Mycenaean sites, list mundane inventories: barley, wool, oil, showing how trade sustained palaces more than heroism ever could. The human element shines in the sailors and dock workers who make this possible. Imagine Nicias, a weathered oarsman whose calloused hands row through storms, or Chloe, a weaver whose textiles fetch high prices in foreign ports. Their lives etched in skeletal remains, showing strain from heavy lifting, reflect the toll of trade. Ports like Kamos were melting pots, where you'd hear dialects from Mycenaean roads and Egypt, each trader carrying stories of distant lands. Yet, dangers loom. Piracy was rife, as evidenced by fortified coastal sites, and sudden squalls could sink a laden ship, leaving families waiting in vain. Trade bound the Aegean, but it also exposed its fragility. The Minoans' dominance waned after the Thera eruption around 1600 BCE, disrupting routes and weakening Crete's ports. Mycenaeans, like your Athenian kin, filled the gap, their ships carrying coarser pottery but sharper ambitions. As you steer toward Crete under a fading sun, you wonder what hidden tensions simmer beneath these prosperous exchanges, threatening to unravel the routes you sail. You're aboard your ship now, the Aegean's waves rocking gently as you approach. Crete's southern coast, around 1450 BCE, the myth of Theseus paints a heroic journey. But your reality is one of calculated risks and relentless labor, navigating trade routes that stitch together the Bronze Age world. As a merchant sailor, your life is dictated by the winds, the weight of your cargo, and the trust you place in distant ports. The sea is both your road and your adversary, its currents carrying you to Knossos while hiding dangers that could end your voyage in an instant. This is the true story behind the legend, a network of trade sustained by ordinary hands, not heroic deeds. Your ship, a 20-meter vessel with a square sail, is a marvel of Mycenaean shipbuilding. Its hull, crafted from oak and cedar, is reinforced with ropes to withstand rough seas. You carry goods vital to Athens' economy: olive oil in sealed amphorae, wool dyed with murex purple, and bronze ingots for tools. In return, you seek Crete's treasures, saffron for dyes, wine for feasts, and intricately painted pottery. Excavations at Kamos reveal quays and warehouses where you'd unload your cargo, recorded by scribes on clay tablets. These records, written in Linear B, detail shipments of grain and textiles, showing a bureaucracy as vital as any palace wall. The people you meet shape this story. There's Demetrios, a navigator who reads the stars to avoid shoals, his knowledge drawn from generations of sailors. Or Zoe, a Cretan merchant whose family trades obsidian blades, her sharp bargaining ensuring her children's future. Their lives, like yours, are marked by the sea's rhythm, long voyages, brief reunions, and constant uncertainty. Shipwrecks, like the one at Cape Gelidonia, revealed the stake-sunken cargoes of copper and glass. Lives lost to storms. You'd share meals of barley bread and dried fish with your crew, swapping tales of Mycenaean ports like Pylos, where warriors turn traders. Crete's wealth, trade's fragility becomes clearer with each voyage. The Thera eruption's aftermath lingers, with ash-damaged fields reducing Crete's exports. Mycenaean influence grows. Their pottery, less refined than Minoan, fills Knossos markets, hinting at a shift in power. You notice fewer Minoan ships, their crews wary of piracy or mainland raids. Coastal fortifications, like those at Gla, suggest rising tensions. At Kamos, you overhear whispers of unrestixes levied by palace elites, strain local merchants, and drought evidenced by shrunken grain stores, tightens belts. Your own city, Athens, grows bolder, its ships sailing farther, its leaders eyeing Crete's weakened state as you dock at Kamos. Unloading jars under torchlight, you feel the weight of change. The routes that made Crete rich now draw ambitious rivals, and the sea, once a Minoan domain, feels contested. You barter for a final load of saffron, its scent sharp in the night air, and wonder how long can these trade networks hold against the tides of ambition and calamity sweeping the Aegean. The port of Kamos fades into the dawn haze as you sail from Crete, your ship heavy with goods, but your mind heavier with unease. It's around 1375 BCE, and the Aegean trade routes, the lifeblood of the Bronze Age, are fraying. The myth of Theseus, slaying the Minotaur, casts him as a liberator, but the real story lies in the collapse of Minoan trade and the rise of Mycenaean ambition. You're a merchant sailor, your life woven into the routes that carried olive oil and bronze across the sea, but now those routes buckle under environmental and human pressures. The heroic journey is over. What remains is a struggle to survive a world in transition. The Minoan trade network, once a marvel, crumbles under multiple blows. The Thera eruptions, lingering effects, choked fields, reduced harvests have weakened Crete's ports. Archaeological evidence from Nasus shows smaller storage jars, a sign of scarcity. Your voyages yield less, fewer saffron bundles, thinner pottery stocks. Mycenaean ships, like yours, now dominate, their angular designs crowding out Minoan vessels. Excavations reveal Mycenaean pottery and linear B tablets in Crete's final layers, suggesting a takeover, perhaps peaceful, perhaps not. Nasus burns around this time, its charred ruins hinting at fire. Whether from revolt, invasion, or accident, the human toll is palpable. You think of Demetrios, the navigator, now older, his eyes strained from years of squinting at stars. He speaks of abandoned ports, like Amnisos, where warehouses stand empty. Zoe, the Cretan merchant, barters her last obsidian blades, her family moving inland to farm. Sailors' lives, marked by worn joints in skeletal remains, reflect the grind of rowing and hauling. Yet, resilience persists. Smaller ports, like Chenia, thrive, their traders adapting to new routes, carrying Mycenaean goods to Cyprus and beyond. Your own cargo-attic wool, oil finds markets in Rhodes, where local merchants still honor Minoan trade customs. The Theseus myth, born later, cloaks these mundane struggles in heroism. His journey to Crete likely reflects Mycenaean voyages, not to slay monsters, but to secure trade or influence. The labyrinth and minotaur became symbols of a fading Minoan world, its complexity and power reduced to tales. This transformation shows how history turns labor into legend, trade routes into epic quests. Your work, guiding ships through treacherous waters, lives on in these stories, though your name does not. Today, these trade routes remind us of connectivity's power and fragility. The Aegean network, like modern global supply chains, thrived on cooperation but faltered under disruption, climate shifts, political upheaval. The sailors' adaptability, finding new ports amid collapse, mirrors our own need to navigate economic and environmental challenges. As you steer toward Athens, the sea calm under a starry sky, you reflect on the roots that built empires. What endures is not the cargo, but the human drive to connect, to carry goods and ideas across horizons. What new journeys will we chart when our own networks falter? Ariadne's thread, the overlooked art of Minoan weaving. As you step into a sunlit courtyard in Nasus, around 1700 BCE. The rhythmic clack of looms fills the air, blending with the chatter of women working under an olive tree's shade. The myth of Ariadne, who gave Theseus a thread to navigate the labyrinth, casts her as a heroine, but her story echoes a deeper truth, the vital, often overlooked craft of weaving that sustained Minoan Crete. You are a weaver, your fingers deftly threading flax through a wooden loom, creating textiles that clothe families, adorn palaces, and travel across the Aegean. This is no tale of gods or monsters, but of ordinary hands shaping a civilization's wealth and identity through the quiet art of thread. Imagine yourself seated at an upright loom, its warp weighted with clay stones, a design unchanged since Neolithic times. The Minoans, thriving in the Middle Bronze Age, wove linen from flax grown in Crete's fertile valleys and wool from sheep grazing its hills. Your work produces everything from coarse tunics to intricate tapestries dyed with murex purple and saffron yellow, colors that fetch high prices in Egypt and Anatolia. Archaeological finds, like loom weights from Phaistos and vivid frescoes at Knossos, show women as central to this craft, their patterns of spirals and lilies reflecting the island's natural beauty. Your day begins at dawn, carding wool with bone combs or spinning flax into fine thread with a clay whirl. The process is slow, deliberate. A single tunic might take days, a tapestry, weeks. You work alongside others' mothers, daughters, sisters, sharing stories of harvests or trade, ships. Excavations reveal weaving workshops near palaces, suggesting your textiles were not just domestic, but economic engines. A single bolt of dyed cloth could trade for bronze or grain, linking your loom to distant markets. Linear A-tablets, still undeciphered, likely record your output, tallying skeins of wool or lengths of linen. The human story shines in these routines. Picture Klymene, a young weaver whose intricate designs graced Knossos halls, her hands stained with dye or old. Thalia, teaching apprentices to knot fringes, her arthritis a testament to decades at the loom. Skeletal remains from Minoan cemeteries show repetitive strain in women's wrists, evidence of their labor's toll. Yet, weaving was empowerment. Your textiles gave you a voice in trade, a role in rituals. Frescoes depict women in flounced skirts, their woven patterns signaling status, perhaps worn in bull-leaping ceremonies. But this craft, so central to Crete's prosperity, rests on fragile foundations. Flax fields depend on rain, and drought, hinted at in pollen records, threatens crops. Trade routes, vital for dyes and wool, falter after the Thera eruption around 1600 BCE as you weave under the courtyard's fading light. You wonder, could the threads you spin, binding Crete to the world, unravel under pressures you cannot yet see? You're back in the Knossos courtyard, the loom's steady rhythm grounding you as you weave linen threads into a cloth destined for a merchant ship. It's 1600 BCE, and the Minoan world hums with activity, your textiles at its heart. The myth of Ariadne's thread, guiding Theseus through the labyrinth, romanticizes your craft. But the reality is far more tangible. Weaving is the backbone of Crete's economy, clothing its people and fueling trade across the Aegean. As you work, your hands stained with ochre dye, you feel the weight of a society that depends on your skill. Yet you sense the tremors of change threatening its stability. Your loom produces more than cloth. It weaves Crete into a global network. The wool you use, shorn from local sheep, is dyed with murex, a costly purple extracted from sea snails harvested near Kamos. Saffron, plucked from crocus fields, adds golden hues, prized in Egypt for its medicinal and aesthetic value. Archaeological evidence, like dye vats at Akrotiri, shows the labor-intensive process, hours of boiling shells, stirring vats, and soaking cloth. Your textiles, tunics, shawls, tapestries travel to Mycenae, Cyprus, and the Levant, exchanged for copper or grain. A single tapestry, with its intricate rosettes, could secure a season's food for a village. The weavers around you bring this story to life. There's Klymene, now a master, her designs copied by apprentices who struggle to match her precision. Thalia, her hands gnarled, oversees the carding of wool, ensuring no fiber is wasted. These women, often unnamed in history, were economic pillars. Linear B tablets from later Mycenaean sites list weavers, mostly women, paid in grain or oil. Their output tightly controlled by palace overseers. Your own work, a bolt of linen dyed crimson, might adorn a priestess or be traded for obsidian blades, linking your courtyard to distant shores. Yet the craft's demands reveal its vulnerabilities. Flax and wool rely on agriculture, and the Thera eruption's ash, found in soil layers, has scorched fields, shrinking harvests. You notice less wool arriving, the sheep herds, thinned by drought. Trade routes, too, grow precarious. Ships return with tales of piracy or storms, and Mycenaean traders, their pottery flooding Nasus, demand more for less. Social tensions simmer. Palace elites, depicted in frescoes wearing your finest cloth, hoard resources, while weavers, like Klymene, barter scraps for food. Skeletal remains show malnutrition in some, hinting at unequal shares in Crete's wealth. Weaving binds communities, but it also exposes divides. Your textiles, symbols of Minoan artistry, are coveted yet undervalued. Your labor essential but overlooked. As you, not a final thread, the courtyard dimming under twilight. You hear rumors of unrest, villages straining under palace taxes, merchants wary of Mycenaean ships. The thread you spin feels like Ariadne's, a lifeline, but to what end? As you fold your cloth, ready for tomorrow's market, the courtyard is quieter now. The myth of Ariadne's thread, a guide through the labyrinth, has woven itself into legend. But your reality, as a Minoan weaver, tells a different story. One of a craft that clothed a civilization, only to see it unravel. The Aegean world is shifting, and the textiles that once bound Crete to distant lands now lie in the shadow of decline. Their makers caught in a web of scarcity and change. The Thera eruption's long shadow, cast nearly a century ago, has choked Crete's fields, reducing flax and wool supplies. Pollen records confirm shrunken harvests, and your loom sees less raw material each season. The palace, once a hub for your textiles, tightens its grip. Linear B tablets, adopted by Mycenaean overseers, show weavers like you rationed grain for their work. Trade, too, falters. Ports, like Kamos, once bustling, grow silent as Mycenaean ships dominate, their coarser cloth replacing your intricate designs. Nasus burns around 1375 BCE, its ruins charred beams, scattered loom, weights marking the end of Minoan supremacy. Yet the weaver's resilience endures. You imagine Klymene adapting her patterns for local markets, her simpler designs, clothing. Villagers in Gornia, Thalia, too old to weave, teaches children to spin, passing on skills that outlast the palaces. Archaeological finds show weaving persisting in smaller settlements, with loom weights and spindles in post-Minoan sites. Your textiles, once traded as far as Egypt, now sustain local economies, their patterns echoing in later Greek art. The myth of Ariadne, born from this era, transforms your craft into a symbol of guidance, a thread linking past ingenuity to future. Stories that the human cost is clear. Skeletal remains reveal weavers' strained wrists and hunched backs, their lives marked by labor and scarcity. Yet, your work gave women agency, a role in Crete's economy and rituals. Frescoes of flounced skirts, woven by hands like yours, show pride in craft, even as palaces crumble. The shift to Mycenaean rule, whether by conquest or assimilation, absorbed your techniques, with their weavers adopting Minoan looms. This continuity, quiet but profound, shows how ordinary labor shapes history's fabric. Today, Ariadne's thread reminds us of the unseen threads binding society. Weaving, a mundane act, built wealth and culture. The Minoan weaver's adaptability, creating beauty amid scarcity, offers a lesson. Resilience lies in the hands that work, not the palaces that rule. As you set down your loom, the stars above Crete gleam, as they did for Klymene and Thalia. Their threads, like yours, wove a world now dust, but their legacy endures in every fabric we touch. What threads will we weave, and will they hold when our own world frays? The Minotaur's shadow, livestock management in mythic times, as you tread the dusty paths of Crete's hinterlands around 1800 BCE. The lowing of cattle and the bleating of sheep fill the air, mingling with the scent of wild thyme. The myth of the Minotaur, a monstrous bullman lurking in a labyrinth, casts a long shadow, but the reality is far humbler. The meticulous labor of herders who sustained Minoan society through livestock. You are one such herder, guiding your flock across Crete's hills, your life tied to the animals that feed, clothe, and enrich a civilization. This is no tale of heroes, but of ordinary hands, managing herds that built an empire's wealth. Picture yourself leading a herd of long-horned cattle toward Knossos, their hooves kicking up dust on trails worn by generations. The Minoans, masters of the Middle Bronze Age, relied on livestock, cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs for survival. Your animals provide meat, milk, wool, and hides, but also power. Oxen pull plows to till fields for barley and figs. Archaeological finds, like cattle bones at Phaistos and clay figurines of bulls, show their centrality. The famous bull-leaping frescoes at Knossos, depicting acrobats vaulting over charging beasts, hint at rituals. But your daily work is less glamorous, ensuring your herd thrives. Your day begins at dawn, milking goats or shearing sheep, their wool destined for weavers' looms. You'd drive cattle to graze on slopes near Mount Juctus, watching for predators. Like wolves, rare but dangerous, pens built from stone and wood dot the landscape, their remains uncovered in rural sites like Cato, Zakros, You'd trade surplus milk or cheese at Knossos markets, bartering for pottery or bronze tools. Linear A tablets, though undeciphered, likely record your herd's numbers of sheep. Weights of wool tying your labor to the palace's bureaucracy. The human story emerges in your fellow herders. Imagine Phaedon, a young shepherd whose knowledge of grazing lands rivals any scribes, or Lysia, a dairy worker whose cheese feeds palace workers. Their lives etched in skeletal remains, showing where from carrying heavy loads reflect the grind of pastoral life. Herding was communal. Villages shared pastures and festivals, perhaps tied to bull rituals, united families. Yet your work supports a palace elite whose frescoes glorify bulls while your hands mend fences. Livestock management, though, rests on Crete's fragile ecology. Grazing depletes hillsides, and pollen records show deforestation from clearing land for pastures. Thera eruption looms, its ash-threatening fields your herds rely on. As you guide your cattle to a stream, their bells clinking softly, you wonder, could the animals that sustain Crete's wealth also strain the land they tread, pushing the island toward an unseen breaking point? You're back on Crete's rugged hills, the sun high as you herd sheep toward a stone pen near Knossos. Circa 1600 BCE, the Minotaur myth, with its monstrous bull, romanticizes the animals you tend. But your reality is one of sweat and strategy, managing livestock that anchor Minoan life. As a herder, your days are filled with the practicalities of feeding, shearing, and protecting your animals. Each task supporting a palace economy that trades wool and cheese across the Aegean. Yet, beneath this routine, you sense the land's limits, strained by the very herds that sustain it. Your work is a delicate balance. Sheep and goats, nimble on rocky slopes, provide wool and milk, while cattle, prized for plowing and rituals, graze richer valleys. You'd rotate pastures to prevent overgrazing, a practice hinted at in archaeological surveys of Minoan settlements. Excavations at Syra reveal pens and troughs, showing careful planning. You'd milk cows at dawn, churning butter in clay vessels, or shear sheep with bronze shears, their wool sent to weavers like those in Knossos courtyards. Your surplus hides, cheese trades for obsidian or wine at coastal markets, linking your hills to distant ports. The people around you breathe life into this story. Phaedon, now skilled, tracks seasonal rains to find grass, his knowledge vital as drought creeps in. Lysia, the dairy worker, experiments with aging cheese, her wares prized in commodes. Their lives, like yours, are marked by labor, skeletal remains, show worn knees from crouching to milk or herd. Communal effort defines your world. Villagers share grazing rights, and festivals, perhaps echoing bull-leaping rites, celebrate harvests. Linear B tablets, emerging as Mycenaeans influence Crete, list your herds, but also taxes, tying you to palace demands. The Thera eruptions fall out. Around this time, disrupts your rhythm. Ash layers in soil samples choke grazing lands, forcing you to drive herds farther, exhausting both you and the animals. Trade routes falter. Fewer ships bring tin for tools, and Mycenaean pottery, coarser than Minoan, crowds markets. You hear whispers of unrest. Palace elites demand more wool, yet offer less grain. Social divides grow herders like fade barter scraps to survive, while frescoes glorify the elite in woven cloaks. Overgrazing, evident in eroded hillsides, adds pressure. Your herds, thin as grass, dwindles. Your animals, symbols of wealth, are also liabilities. Cattle need water, but streams dry up, and goats strip sparse vegetation. You mend pens under starlight, your hands rough from rope, and ponder the paradox. Your herds feed Crete, yet their hunger taxes the land. The Minotaur's shadow feels a PT not a monster, but a warning of excess, as you guide your flock to a shrinking pasture. A question gnaws. Can the systems that rely on your livestock endure the growing strain of a changing world? The hills of Crete are silent now, the stars bright above your pen as you tend a dwindling herd. Around 1450 BCE, the Minotaur, a mythic beast born of a bull, looms in stories, but your world as a herder is one of fading pastures and faltering systems. The Minoan civilization, once vibrant, crumbles under pressures you feel in every step. Sparse grass, thinner animals, and a palace that demands more than it gives. Your livestock, the backbone of Crete's wealth, now mirror its decline. Their care a testament to resilience amid collapse. The Thera eruption's legacy, a century old, has scarred the land. Ash in soil layers, found by archaeologists, shows why your pastures shrink. Crops fail, leaving less fodder for cattle. Your herds, once numbering hundreds, are smaller bones from Nasus, reveal malnourished animals. Trade, which carried your wool to Egypt, stumbles as Mycenaean ships dominate. Their pottery, angular and plain, fills Camo's markets, and linear B tablets record your output under new overseers. Nasus burns around 1375 BCE, its charred pens and scattered bones hinting at chaos, perhaps invasion, perhaps rebellion. Yet your resilience shines. You picture Phaeton guiding his sheep to distant slopes, finding grass where others see barrenness. Lycia, now older, teaches her daughters to churn milk, her cheese sustaining villages like Gornia. Smaller settlements, archaeological evidence, shows adapt, using your livestock for local needs, wool for homespun cloth, goats for milk. The bull leaping rituals, once central, fade, but their spirit lives in festivals where herders share meat and stories. The Minotaur myth, born later, transforms your cattle into symbols of power and fear, a nod to their role in Minoan life. The human cost is heavy. Skeletal remains show herders' worn joints, their lives spent chasing herds across eroded hills. Yet your work endures. Mycenaeans adopt your pens and shearing techniques, and wool patterns echo in later Greek textiles. Your labor, uncelebrated, shaped a civilization's economy and culture, proving that survival lies in the mundane, mending fences, milking goats. The mythologizing of your bulls into monsters reflects a human need to elevate the ordinary, to find meaning in daily toil today. The Minotaur's shadow reminds us of systems pushed to their limits. Livestock management, vital to Minoan prosperity, mirrors modern agriculture's challenges: overgrazing, climate shifts, resource scarcity. Your adaptability finding new pastures, bartering milk offers, a lesson for our time where sustainability demands ingenuity. As you close the pen, the night air cool, you reflect on the herds that fed a world now gone. their legacy lives. In every field we till, every system we sustain. What will our own labors leave behind when the pastures of our age run dry? Divine battle plans, siege tactics from the Trojan War, Irazu, stand on the windswept plain before the walls of Troy around 1250 BCE. The distant clash of bronze and shouts of warriors echo faintly. The Trojan War, immortalized by Homer's Iliad, conjures images of divine schemes and heroic duels. But the reality is grittier, a prolonged siege driven by the mundane logistics of supply lines, fortifications, and survival. You are a Mycenaean quartermaster, not a hero like Achilles, tasked with keeping an army fed and armed. Your world is one of grain sacks, bronze spearheads, and the relentless labor that underpins a decade-long war. Picture yourself overseeing a camp sprawled along the Scamander River, its tents patched with hides and its fires burning olive wood. The Mycenaeans, a coalition of Greek city-states, have laid siege to Troy, a fortified city on the Anatolian coast controlling trade routes to the Black Sea. Your role is vital, ensuring the army's survival through careful rationing. Archaeological evidence from Hisarlik, believed to be Troy, reveals thick walls of limestone and mud brick designed to withstand assaults. You'd tally barley and dried fish stored in clay jars, while scribes record supplies on linear B tablets, their lists detailing oil, wine, and bronze for repairs. Your day begins at dawn, checking ox-drawn carts hauling grain from allied ports. Like roads, the army, perhaps 10,000 strong, consumes vast resources. Excavations suggest Troy's besiegers relied on local farms and distant shipments. You'd coordinate with foragers scouring the countryside for goats or wheat, their work risky as Trojan scouts harass them. Siege tactics depend on attrition. The Mycenaeans aim to starve Troy, whose granaries, found in Troy-Vy's ruins, held enough for months. You'd oversee sappers digging beneath walls, using bronze picks, or builders crafting wooden rams, their frames reinforced with hides. The human story grounds this labor. Imagine Nicandros, a forager whose knowledge of local streams keeps the camp watered, or Irene, a weaver mending tents, her hands worn from flax. Their lives, like yours, are marked by strained skeletal remains from Mycenaean sites, show malnutrition and injuries from labor. The camp is a microcosm of society. Smiths forged spearheads, cooks stir barley porridge, and priests offer sacrifices, their rituals echoing Homer's tales, but rooted in survival. You'd barter with local villagers for figs, wary of ambushes. Yet, sieges are precarious. Troy's walls, 5 meters thick, defy easy breach, and your supplies dwindle as storms delay ships. The Thera eruptions, long-term effects felt decades earlier, have weakened Aegean agriculture, straining your stores. As you portion out grain under a darkening sky, you wonder, can the Mycenaeans resolve and resources outlast Troy's defenses? Or will this siege falter on the edge of exhaustion? You're back in the Mycenaean camp outside Troy's towering walls, the air heavy with dust and the scent of burning wood. Circa 1240 BCE, the Trojan War's epic battles, sung by poets, fade before the reality of your role as a quartermaster, managing the grind of a siege that tests endurance over glory. Your days revolve around rations, repairs, and the slow squeeze of Troy's defenses, a strategy less divine than deliberate, rooted in the mundane tasks that keep an army alive. As you tally dwindling supplies, the weight of this protracted war presses on you, hinting at cracks in the Mycenaeans' campaign. Your work centers on logistics. The camp, sprawling along the Scamander, hums with activity. Smiths hammer bronze into arrowheads. Carpenters shape ladders from oak, and cooks boil lentils over scarce firewood. Archaeological finds at Hisarlik show Troy's walls, reinforced, with sloping bases, resisted direct assault, forcing reliance on starvation tactics. You'd oversee grain stores, hauled from Mycenaean ports like Pylos, and distribute oil and wine, tracked on linear B tablets. These records, found in Mycenaean palaces, list rations for soldiers and laborers, revealing a bureaucracy as critical as any spear. The people around you bring this to life. Nicandros, the forager, risks Trojan arrows to gather herbs, his knowledge of the Troad's hills vital. Irene, the weaver, patches sails for supply ships, her fingers raw from flax. Their lives reflect the siege's toll. Skeletal remains from the era show worn joints and signs of hunger. The camp is diverse farmers turned soldiers, women cooking, children fetching water, united by survival. You'd negotiate with local Anatolian traders for barley, their wary glances hinting at Troy's lingering influence. Rituals, like offerings to Athena, boost morale, their smoke rising as you plan the next day's rations. The siege's strain grows evident. Troy's granaries, built into its citadel, hold firm while your supplies falter. The Thera eruptions, aftermath decades prior, has left Aegean fields less fertile, and storms disrupt shipments, shipwrecks. Off Chios attest to the sea's treachery, Mycenaean unity phrase. Allied leaders, like those from Argos, bicker over shares of dwindling loot. Troy's allies, hinted at in Hittite texts, send archers to harass your foragers, stretching your resources thinner. You'd reinforce the camp's palisade with mudbrick, a task echoing Troy's own defenses, but exhaustion creeps in. Social tensions simmer. Soldiers grumble over short rations, while elites in gilded armor demand more. You hear whispers of desertion or mutiny, echoed in later myths of Achilles' rage. The Trojan horse, a later poetic flourish, may reflect real subterfuge, perhaps spies or bribes, but your reality is less dramatic, ensuring enough grain to last another month. As you count jars under torchlight, the camp's fires flickering, a question lingers. Can the Mycenaeans' fragile coalition and strained supplies endure long enough to break Troy, or will the siege collapse under its own weight? The Mycenaean camp lies hushed under a starlit sky, the walls of Troy looming unbroken in the distance. Circa 1230 BCE, as a quartermaster, you've toiled through years of siege, your hands worn from counting grain and mending carts. The Trojan War, woven into myth as a clash of gods and heroes, ends not with divine intervention, but with the slow grind of logistics and desperation. Troy falls, its ruins at Hisarlik, revealing fire-scorched walls, but the victory is hollow, won by attrition and cunning, not glory. Your work, feeding an army, proves the real battle was one of endurance. Troy's collapse, dated around 1230 to 1200 BCE, stems from relentless pressure. Archaeological evidence shows burnt layers in Troy, Vai, and Via, suggesting fire perhaps from a breach or sabotage. Like the mythic Trojan horse, your stores, depleted by years of poor harvests linked to the Thera eruption's aftermath, barely sustain the camp. Linear B tablets cease, hinting at disrupted supply lines as Mycenaean palaces like Pylos weaken. You'd ration barley to soldiers, their faces gaunt, while foragers like Nicandros scavenge dwindling fields, risking Trojan raids. The siege succeeds when Troy's granaries empty, its people starved into submission. The human cost is stark. Erin, the weaver, now mends tattered cloaks for shivering soldiers, her hands trembling from hunger. Nicandros, wounded by an arrow, limps but persists, his knowledge of streams saving lives. Skeletal remains from Mycenaean sites show malnutrition and battle scars, echoing the camp's toll. Yet, resilience endures. Survivors trade with local Anatolians, bartering bronze for grain, and smaller camps persist, as seen in post-siege settlements. The victory, though, fractures the Mycenaeans. Their coalition, strained by greed, dissolves, and many return to a homeland on the brink of collapse. The Trojan War's myths, born later, cloak these struggles. Homer's tales of Achilles and the horse transform logistics into legend, sieges into divine plans. Your work ensuring supplies, repairing rams becomes the backdrop for epic poetry, a testament to how history elevates the mundane. The sieges, tactics like sapping or blockades, influence later Greek warfare. Seen in classical Athens strategies, today Troy's fall mirrors the fragility of systems under strain. Your labor, sustaining an army through scarcity, parallels modern logistics supply, chains faltering in crises. The Mycenaeans' victory, Pyrrhic and costly, warns of overreach. Their collapse soon after, evident in ruined palaces, underscores the limits of ambition. Resilience, like Nicandro's foraging or Erin's stitching, lies in adapting to scarcity. As you pack the last cart, Troy's ashes smoldering, you reflect on the plans that outlast walls. What systems will we build, and how will they fare when tested by time and want? Athena's strategies, olive cultivation, and economic warfares. You walk the terraced hills of Attica around 1200 BCE. The scent of olive blossoms drifts on the breeze, and the gnarled trees stretch toward the horizon. In myth, Athena gifted the olive to Athens, securing her divine patronage. But the real story lies in the hands of farmers who turned this humble tree into an economic powerhouse. You are one such farmer, your life bound to the soil, tending olive groves that fuel trade, and survival in the Mycenaean world. This is no divine miracle, but a tale of labor, strategy, and the slow cultivation of wealth that shaped early Greece. Picture yourself pruning an olive tree with a bronze sickle, its blade dulled from years of use. Olives, domesticated in the Near East by 4000 BCE, reached Greece via Minoan trade routes, thriving in Attica's dry, rocky soil. Your grove, a patchwork of trees on stone terraces, produces fruit for oil, a staple for cooking, lighting, and rituals. Archaeological finds, like olive presses at Pylos and oil jars in Mycenaean tombs, show its value. You'd harvest in late autumn, shaking branches to drop fruit onto nets then crush them in stone basins. The oil stored in clay amphorae for trade. Your day begins at dawn, checking trees for pests or drought. The work is grueling. You haul water from streams, mend terraces with limestone, and barter surplus oil for grain at Athens' agora. Linear B tablets from Mycenaean palaces list oil allocations for priests and workers, tying your grove to the elite. Trade is your lifeline. Ships carry your oil to Crete or Egypt, returning with copper or linen. Excavations of shipwrecks, like those off Aluberin, reveal amphorae packed with oil, proof of its role in Aegean commerce. That the human story grounds this labor. Imagine Callias, a young farmer, learning to graft trees, his hands sticky with sap, or Myrene, a widow pressing oil to feed her children, their lives, marked by worn joints in skeletal remains, reflect the toil of cultivation. Communities share presses and labor, and festivals, perhaps honoring Athena, celebrate harvests with oil offerings. Yet your groves are strategic. Oil wealth strengthens Athens, funding ships and walls, a subtle form of economic warfare against rivals like Mycenae or Sparta. But this prosperity is fragile. Droughts, hinted at in pollen records, parch your trees, and the Thera eruption's aftermath, decades earlier, has left soils less fertile. Trade routes falter as Mycenaean power wanes. As you pour oil into a jar under the midday sun, you wonder, can the groves that enrich Athens withstand the growing threats of scarcity and rivalry? You're back in your attic grove, the olive trees casting dappled shadows as you work under the sun. Circa 1100 BCE, the myth of Athena's gift paints olives as divine. But your reality as a farmer is one of relentless care, turning fruit into oil that powers Athens' rise. Your groves are more than fields, they're economic weapons, their yield shaping trade and influence in a turbulent Aegean. As you press olives in a stone basin, the scent of fresh oil sharp in the air, you feel the weight of a society leaning on your harvest, yet sense the fragility of this green empire. Your work is methodical. You'd inspect trees for blight, trim branches to boost yields, and build terraces to hold scarce rainwater. Olives take years to mature. Trees planted today won't fruit for a decade, but their oil is gold. Archaeological evidence from Mycenaean sites like Tiryns shows oil stored in pithoi, used for cooking, lamps, and anointing the dead. You'd load amphorae onto ships bound for Rhodes or Cyprus, trading oil for tin or pottery. Linear B tablets record your output, detailing oil for palace rituals or workers' rations, tying your labor to Athens' growing power. The people around you bring this to life. Callias, now skilled, teaches his son to prune, passing down knowledge of soil and seasons. Myrene, the widow, barters oil for barley, her press shared with neighbors. Their lives, like yours, bear the marks of toil's skeletal remains, show strained backs from hauling fruit. Villages cooperate, sharing harvest labor and celebrating with oil-soaked feasts, perhaps echoing Athena's cult. Your oil fuels Athens, ships, its navy outpacing rivals, a quiet economic war won through trade, not swords. Yet the system strains. The Thera eruptions, long-term effects, linger. Pollen records show reduced vegetation, and your groves yield less as rains falter. Mycenaean collapse, evident in abandoned palaces, disrupts trade. Fewer ships reach Egypt, and local rivals like Corinth eye your markets. Social tensions simmer. Palace elites demand more oil, yet offer less support, while farmers like Minoan struggle to feed families. Pirate raids, hinted at in coastal fortifications, threaten your shipments. You notice Mycenaean pottery giving way to simpler wares, a sign of shifting power. Your groves, symbols of wealth, are also vulnerabilities. Overplanting depletes soil, and drought kills young trees. You mend terraces under twilight, your hands rough from stone, and ponder Athena's so-called gift. Oil strengthens Athens, but its scarcity could weaken it. As you seal an amphora, its clay cool against your palm. A question nags: can the olive, Athens' economic sword, hold firm against the gathering storms of collapse and competition? The Attic grove lies quiet now, the olive trees stark against a darkening sky. Circa 1000 BCE, as a farmer, you've poured your life into these groves. Their oil fueling Athens' rise, but the Mycenaean world crumbles, and your harvest feels like a fading lifeline. Athena's mythic gift of the olive, celebrated in stories, masks a harsher truth. Cultivation and trade, once Athens' strength, now falter under scarcity and rival ambition. Your work, pressing oil under starlight, reflects a civilization's end, its legacy woven into the roots of a new Greece. The Mycenaean collapse, dated around 1200 to 1100 BCE, shatters the Aegean. Archaeological evidence, abandoned palaces, empty storehouses, shows trade routes broken. Your groves, hit by drought and poor soils from the Thera eruption's aftermath, produce less. Olive pits in digs reveal smaller yields. Ships, once laden with your oil, rarely sail, as piracy and storms choke ports like Piraeus. Linear B records vanish, replaced by oral trade agreements. Athens clings to its groves, but rivals like Sparta, with their own fields, challenge your markets. There, pottery flooding local rows. The human toll is clear. Callias, now aging, grafts trees to save dwindling groves, his hands knotted from labor. Marine, her press idol, trades oil for scraps, her children hungry. Skeletal remains show malnutrition, reflecting lean years, yet resilience persists. Villages like Marathon maintain small groves, bartering oil locally. Your techniques, terracing, grafting, survive, adopted by archaic Greeks who rebuild trade. The olive, central to Athens' identity, inspires later cults of Athena. Its oil used in Panathenaic festivals, as seen in early pottery depicting oil jars. The myth of Athena's gift transforms your labor into legend. Your groves, economic tools, become symbols of divine favor, their oil a currency of power. This elevation of the mundane farmers into divine agents shows how history recasts toil as triumph. Your methods, from pressing to trading, shape classical Greece, where olive oil fuels lamps, diets, and economies, as seen in Athenian amphorae, found across the Mediterranean. Today, the olive story warns of dependence on fragile systems. Your groves, like modern agriculture, faced climate shifts and overexploitation, challenges we echo in strained food chains and resource wars. The farmer's adaptability, saving trees, sharing presses, offers a lesson. Survival lies in community and ingenuity. as you pour the last oil into a jar, the night cool, you reflect on the groves that built Athens. Their roots endure in every olive we press, every economy we sustain. What will our own fields yield when tested by time and scarcity? Poseidon's domain, maritime navigation, and storm predictions. As you stand on the deck of a wooden ship off the coast of Mycenae around 1300 BCE, the Aegean Sea stretches before you, its waves glinting under a restless sky. In myth, Poseidon rules the seas, stirring storms or calming waters, but you, a navigator, know the truth lies in reading stars and winds to guide your vessel. Your life is one of vigilance, steering through treacherous currents to deliver goods that sustain the Mycenaean world. This is no divine tale, but a story of skill, survival, and the quiet art of predicting the sea's moods. Picture yourself gripping the rudder, your ship a 15-meter vessel of cedar planks, laden with amphorae of oil and wool. The Mycenaean, heirs to Minoan seafaring, dominate Aegean trade, their ports like Pylos buzzing with ships bound for Crete or Anatolia. You navigate by landmarks, scape Sonians, cliffs or Naxos, peak sand by stars like Argo, their patterns memorized. Since childhood, archaeological finds, such as the Uluburan shipwreck, reveal cargoes of copper, amber, and pottery, proof of the wealth your voyages carry. You'd check knotted ropes for speed, trailing them in the water, a simple but vital tool. Your day begins. Before dawn, scanning the horizon for clouds or seabirds, signs of coming weather. You'd consult with crewersmen, sailmenders whose lives depend on your judgment. Coastal sites like Kinos show stone, anchors, and net weights, evidence of your trade's reach. You sail to Troy or Cyprus, bartering oil for tin, your voice, mingling with merchants' shouts in bustling ports. Linear B tablets from Pylos list your cargo, tying your ship to palace economies. Storms are your greatest foe. A sudden squall can sink a laden vessel, as wrecks off Chios attest. The human story shines through your crew. Imagine Leandros, a young sailor who spots gulls signaling land, or Thalassa, a sailmender who stitches hold against gales. Their lives, marked by sunburned skin and calloused hands, reflect the sea's toll. Skeletal remains show injuries from hauling ropes. Communities rely on you, villages await your oil, and families pray for your return. Rituals, like offerings to Poseidon, seek calm seas, their altars littered with shells. Yet, navigation is precarious. The Thera eruption's aftermath, decades earlier, has altered currents, and pollen records hint at shifting climates, bringing fiercer storms. You read the sky-red clouds at dawn, a warning of rainbutt errors cost lives. As you steer under a gathering dusk, a question lingers. Can your skills and signs outwit the sea's growing unpredictability? Or will Poseidon's domain claim what you fought to master? You're back aboard your ship, the Aegean's waves rocking gently as you sail toward Crete. Circa 1250 BCE, the myth of Poseidon's wrath fuels prayers. But as a navigator, you trust in your knowledge of winds and stars, honed through years of trial. Your role is to guide vessels through the sea's caprice, delivering goods that bind Mycenaean ports to distant lands. Yet, as you scan the horizon for storm clouds, you sense the fragility of this maritime world. its roots strained by nature and human ambition. Your craft relies on observation. You track the sun's arc to gauge direction, and at night, constellations, like Ursa Major, point north. Winds matter most. Northwesterly, Etesians push you toward Crete, but sudden gusts can shred sails. You'd adjust the square sail, woven from flax, and signal oarsmen to row in rhythm. Archaeological evidence, like anchors at Camos, shows sophisticated ports where you'd dock, trading oil for saffron. Shipwrecks, like Cape Geladonia's, reveal your cargoes, diversity bronze ingots, glass beads linking your ship to Anatolia and Egypt. Linear B tablets list crew rations, tying your voyage to palace ledgers, the people around you ground. This story, Leandros, now seasoned, reads ripples to avoid reefs, his eyes sharp from years at sea. Thalassa, the sailmender, patches cloth with bone needles, her work saving ships from storms. Their lives bear the sea's mark, skeletal remains, show shoulder strain from rowing. Your crew is a community sharing dried fish, swapping tales of Troy's markets, but danger binds you closer. Pirates, hinted at in fortified ports like Gla, stalk your routes, and storms claim unwary ships. You'd offer a clay figurine to Poseidon, a ritual born of fear, not faith. The Aegean's volatility grows. The Thera eruptions, long-term effects altered currents, eroded coast complicate navigation. Pollen records suggest drier climates, spawning fiercer storms that sink vessels, as seen in wrecks off roads. Mycenaean trade, once robust, falters. Fewer ships reach Cyprus, and Troy's siege, ongoing, diverts resources. You notice local traders hoarding grain, wary of shortages. Social tensions rise. Palace elites demand more cargo, but your crew, like Leandros, grumbles over meager rations. Coastal villages, dependent on your goods, grow anxious as shipments dwindle. Your skills reading clouds, tracking stars, are a lifeline, but not infallible. A misjudged wind can strand you, and fog hides landmarks. You teach Leandros to spot gulls circling fish, a sign of shallows. But the sea's moods shift faster now. As you steer through twilight, the sail taut, a question nags. Can your knowledge navigate the growing chaos of a declining Aegean? Or will the sea's unpredictability outmatch even the sharpest eye? The Aegean lies calm tonight, your ship anchored, off Pylos, under a star-filled sky, circa 1200 BCE as a navigator. You've guided vessels through Poseidon's domain, but the Mycenaean world frays, its trade routes collapsing under storms and strife. The myths of Poseidon's storms become metaphors for a sea now harder to tame, its currents carrying your ship and a civilization toward ruin. Your skills, reading winds and stars, sustained trade, but the fall of ports, like Troy and Knossos, marks the end of an era. The Mycenaean collapse, dated around 1200 to 1100 BCE, shatters maritime networks. Archaeological evidence burned palaces, empty docks shows, trades decline. Your routes, once linking Crete to Anatolia, falter as storms, worsened by climatic shifts from the Thera eruption, sink ships, wrecks off Chios, hold shattered amphorae. Ports like Camos grow quiet, their warehouses bare. Linear B tablets vanish, replaced by barter in shrinking villages. You sail less often, your cargo oil pottery traded locally as distant markets like Egypt turn inward. The human cost is stark. Leandros, now gray, navigates with failing eyes, his last voyage marred by a near. Thalassa, her hands cramped, mends sails for local fishermen, her skills outlasting grand voyages. Skeletal remains show sailors' broken bones, lives lost to waves or pirates. Yet, resilience endures. Coastal communities, like those at Lefkandi, adapt, building smaller boats for fishing. Your Technex-using stars, reading swells pass to archaic Greeks, who sail anew by 800 BCE, their ships carrying oil to reborn markets. Poseidon's myths, born later, cloak your labor in divine drama. Your navigation, a matter of survival, becomes tales of gods stirring seas. Homer's Odyssey, echoing your roots, transforms sailors into heroes, their stars into divine guides. Your tools, knotted ropes, stone anchors, influence classical navigation, seen in Athenian triremes. The sea, your domain, shapes Greece's identity. Its ports, the heart of later city-states. Today, your story mirrors our reliance on fragile systems. Maritime trade, like global logistics, thrives on skill, but falters in chaos. Climate shifts, supply chain breaks. Your adaptability, new currents, bartering locally offers a lesson. Survival lies in mastering change. As you tie off the sail, the sea lapping softly, you reflect on the roots that built empires. Their legacy endures in every ship we sail, every star we follow. What paths will we chart when our own seas grow stormy? Themis, scales, village disputes, and early legal codes as you sit in the shade of an olive tree in a small Mycenaean village near Pylos around 1300 BCE. The murmur of voices rises from a gathered crowd. The myth of Themis, goddess of justice, evokes divine order, but you, a village elder, mediate disputes with no gods in sightly farmers, shepherds, and clay tablets. Your role is to resolve quarrels over land, livestock, or debts, maintaining peace in a community tied to the palace, yet rooted in its own traditions. This is no grand court, but a quiet struggle to balance fairness with survival, shaping the seeds of Greece's early legal codes. Picture yourself facing two farmers, their hands rough from plowing, arguing over a boundary stone shifted by a flood. Disputes like these, over fields, water, or stolen goats are common, as evidenced by linear B tablets from Pylos listing land allotments and debts. You'd listen, your authority earned through age and wisdom, not divine mandate. The Mycenaeans, thriving in the late Bronze Age, relied on such mediation to keep villages stable, supporting palaces that taxed grain and wool. You'd consult local customs, unwritten but binding. You'd summon witnesses, neighbors who saw the deal, and propose a repayment perhaps, wool or labor. Archaeological finds, like clay seals from Thebes, suggest early record-keeping, tying disputes to palace oversight. You'd meet in the village square, near a stone altar where offerings to gods like Zeus ensure trust. These gatherings, blending talk and ritual, knit the community together, resolving tensions before they spark violence. The human story shines here. Imagine Eudoxos, a farmer whose temper flares over a trampled field, or Chloe, a widow seeking her share of a harvest. Their lives etched in skeletal remains, showing toils where reflect the stakes. A lost crop means hunger. Villages like yours, scattered across Mycenaean, rely on cooperation, shared wells, communal grazing. But disputes test bonds. You'd hear both sides, your words measured, aiming to restore harmony. Women, like Chloe, often mediate smaller quarrels. Their voices vital in a society where family ties underpin justice. Yet, fairness is fragile. Palace elites, demanding taxes, skewed disputes toward their favor, as seen in tablets listing tribute. The Thera eruption's aftermath, decades earlier. Strains, resources, pollen records show poor harvests, sparking more quarrels over land. As you etch a debt agreement on clay under fading light, a question lingers. Can your village's fragile balance of custom and compromise hold against growing pressures from above and below? You're back in the village square near Pylos, the air thick with dust and tension as you mediate another dispute, circa 1250 BCE. Themis, the mythic embodiment of justice, looms in later tales. But your role as an elder is grounded in the practical resolving quarrels to keep your community intact. Your words, weighed like scales, settle fights over sheep, water, or debts, laying the foundation for Greece's early legal codes. Yet, as you listen to angry voices under the midday sun, you sense the strain of a world where palace demands and scarce resources threaten the harmony you strive to maintain. Today's dispute involves a stolen goat. A shepherd, Nicias, accuses a neighbor of theft, while the accused claims it wandered. The air thick with dust and tension as you mediate another dispute, circa 1250 BCE. Themis, the mythic embodiment of justice, looms in later tales. Your words, weighed like scales, settle fights over sheep, water, or debts, laying the foundation for Greece's early legal codes. Yet, as you listen to angry voices under the midday sun, you sense the strain of a world where palace demands and scarce resources threaten the harmony you strive to maintain. Today's dispute involves a stolen goat. A shepherd, Nicias, accuses a neighbor of theft, while the accused claims it wandered. You'd call witnesses neighbors who saw the animal and inspect hoofprints near the pen, a skill honed by years in the fields. Archaeological evidence, like clay tablets from Pylos, shows disputes over livestock were common, often settled by elders using custom, restitution in kind or labor. You might rule that the accused returns the goat or pays in wool, sealing the agreement with a shared oath by the altar, a ritual to restore trust. Your work binds the village. Nicias, his face lined from hurting, relies on your fairness to keep his flock intact. Chloe, the widow, watches, knowing her own disputes over inherited land depend on your judgment. Their lives, marked by toil in skeletal remains, show the stakes. A lost animal could starve a family. Women like Chloe often mediate smaller disputes, their voices shaping community norms, as seen in later archaic inscriptions crediting women in local councils. The system phrase, though the Thera eruptions, long-term effects, evidenced by shrunken harvests in soil records, spark more disputes over scarce grazing land. Palace elites, documented in linear B tablets, demand heavier taxes, favoring their allies in rulings, which stirs resentment. You notice Nicias hoarding grain, wary of palace scribes who tally his debts. Mycenaean influence grows, their bureaucracy encroaching on village customs. Coastal raids, hinted at in fortified sites, disrupt trade. You settle disputes with precedent returning stolen goods, splitting contested fields, but the palace's shadow looms. A misjudged ruling could spark feuds, as seen in later Greek tales of vendettas. You etch agreements on clay, hoping to preserve peace, but the ground feels unsteady. As you dismiss the crowd, their voices fading under twilight, a question nags. Can your village's traditions of fairness withstand the growing weight of external rule and dwindling resources? The village square is quiet now, the olive tree casting long shadows as you sit. Weary from a day of mediation, circa 1200 BCE, the myth of Themis, with her scales of justice, will later glorify your work. But as an elder near Pylos, your reality is one of fraying bonds and a collapsing Mycenaean world. Your rulings over land, livestock, debts have held your community together. But scarcity and external pressures unravel the customs that guided you. The scales tip, not by divine will, but by the weight of hunger and change, marking the end of an era. The Mycenaean collapse, dated around 1200 to 1100 BCE, shatters village stability. Archaeological evidence burned, settlements, empty granaries, shows a world in decline. The Thera eruption's aftermath, with its barren soils, leaves fields fallow. Skeletal remains reveal malnutrition. Your rulings grow desperate, dividing shrinking pastures or settling debts with labor instead of grain. Palace oversight, once distant, vanishes as Pylos archives cease. Linear B tablets buried in ash. Mycenaean elites flee, leaving villages to fend for themselves. Rivals like Athens encroach, their traders demanding more for less, as seen in coarser pottery flooding. Markets. The human toll is heavy. Nicias, the shepherd, now guards his flock with a spear, fearing raids hinted at in coastal fortifications. Chloe, the widow, barters her last oil to settle a land dispute, her children thin. Yet resilience endures. Smaller villages, like Lef Candy, adapt, forming councils to mediate disputes, as seen in early archaic inscriptions. Women like Chloe, often mediators, influence these systems, their voices echoing in communal decisions. Themismith, born later, transforms your labor into divine order. Your rulings, rooted in fairness, become tales of justice, inspiring classical Greece's legal assemblies. The disputes you settle Dover goats, or fields lay groundwork for courts. Seen in Athens' Agora by 600 BCE, your work, uncelebrated, proves that order arises from ordinary compromise, not gods. Today, your story mirrors our struggles with fairness. Village disputes, like modern conflicts over resources, test community bonds. Your adaptability mediating with dwindling means teaches resilience amid scarcity. Climate shifts and economic strain echo your challenges, pushing us to balance justice with survival. As you etch a final agreement on clay, the stars bright above Pylos, you reflect on the scales that held your world. Their legacy lives in every law we craft, every dispute we settle. What justice will we forge when our own systems falter? Ominous portents, bird watching in archaic divination, practicize you. Sit on a rocky outcrop overlooking the plains of Boeotia around 800 BCE. The dawn sky hums with the calls of hawks and crows. In Greek myth, birds carry messages from gods. But you, a village seer, know the truth lies in patient observation, reading their flights to guide your community through uncertain times. Your role as an augur interpreting bird omens is no divine gift, but a skill honed by watching wings against the wind. This is the story of ordinary eyes seeking meaning in the mundane. Picture yourself scanning the horizon, your staff resting on the ground as a flock of doves rises from an olive grove. Bird divination or augury was central to Greek life, as seen in Homer's Iliad, where eagles signal Zeus will. Age practices, archaeological evidence, like votive bird figurines at Delphi, shows birds' sacred role. But your work is practical, advising farmers when to sow or warriors when to march. You'd record omens on wooden tablets, tying your craft. 2 village decisions. Your day begins early, climbing hills to catch the first flights. Villagers seek your counselor farmer, worried about drought. A merchant planning a sea voyage. You'd watch a swallow's swoop or an owl's silent glide, interpreting their patterns against the sky's quadrants, a method echoed in later Greek texts like Hesiod's works and days. These omens guide sowing times or trade expeditions, linking your hill to ports like Chalcis. Your predictions, though not always accurate, offer hope, calming fears in a post-Mycenaean world of fragile recovery. The human story grounds your work. Imagine Kleon, a young apprentice, learning to spot a vulture's glide, his eyes sharp but untested, or Lysandra, a widow who brings you bread for omens about her son's journey. Their lives, marked by toil in skeletal remains, reflect reliance on your skill. Villages like yours, rebuilding after the Mycenaean collapse, depend on augury to time planting or avoid raids, as seen in fortified sites. You'd share meals with elders, discussing signs under starlight, your words shaping communal trust. Yet, augury is precarious. Droughts, evident in soil records, shrank harvests, and villagers question your readings when crops fail. A gray sky, a question lingers. Can your bird sign steer your village through the growing uncertainties of a fractured Greece? You're back on the Boeotian hill, the wind carrying the sharp cry of a falcon as you watch its flight. Circa 750 BCE, the mythic aura of birds as divine messengers fades before your reality as a seer, deciphering their patterns to guide your village through planting, trade, and conflict. Your augury, rooted in archaic Greek tradition, is less about gods than survival. Yet, as you trace a crow's arc under gathering clouds, you sense the fragility of your role in a world of doubt and division. Your work demands precision. You'd divide the sky into quadrants ceased for beginnings, west for endings, note a bird species, direction or number. A hawk soaring rightward signals favor. To owls at dusk warn of strife. These rules, echoed in later texts like the Homeric hymns, guide your advice. A farmer delays sowing, a merchant postpones a voyage. Archaeological finds, like bird-shaped bronzes at Olympia. Their labor, you'd scratch omens on wax tablets, shared with elders in the agora, linking your hill to Chalcis' bustling port. The people around you bring this to life. Kleon, your apprentice, now spots a swallow's dive, learning to read its haste as a storm's sign. Lysandra, the widow, seeks omens for her son's trade ship, her hands worn from weaving. Their lives, like yours, bear scarcities, mark skeletal remains, show hunger from lean years. Your village, recovering from the Mycenaean collapse, relies on your predictions to plant barley or join raids, as seen in early inscriptions of communal decisions. You'd share wine at festivals, your omens easing fears of drought or war, but doubt creeps in. Poor harvests linked to dry climates in pollen. Records spark murmurs when your omens fail. A flock of doves ignored brings a barren season. Rival seers, backed by Theban elites, challenge your readings, their influence tied to growing trade wealth. Social tensions rise. Farmers like Lysandra's son hoard grain, fearing raids, while elites demand omens, favoring their plans, as seen in early oracle records. The collapses, aftermath abandoned settlements, broken trade routes strains trust in your craft. As villagers turn to new cults or logic, your augury, a lifeline, teeters on belief. A misread sign could sway a village to ruin, as later Greek tales warn of false omens. You teach Kleon to watch gulls for sea winds, but the sky feels less certain. As you mark a tablet under twilight, a question nags: can your bird signs, rooted in tradition, guide a village through the growing skepticism and strife of a changing Greece? The Boeotian hill is silent now, the stars bright above as you watch a lone owl glide. Circa 700 BCE, as a seer, your bird omens have guided your village through sowing and strife. But archaic Greece shifts, its people turning from augury to reason and new oracles. The myth of divine birds fades, your craft watching wings for signs replaced by skepticism and written laws. Your role, once central, wanes as villages like yours face hunger and rivalries, their trust in omens crumbling like the Mycenaean world before them. The post-Mycenaean recovery falters. Archaeological evidence sparse, settlements, thin harvests shows a Greece strained by drought, as pollen records confirm. Your omens, predicting rain or peace, fail when fields stay dry. Villagers like Lysandra, her son lost at sea, question your craft. Trade revives, with Chalcis ships carrying pottery, but wealth concentrates in elites, as seen in rich graves at Eretria. They favor Delphic oracles, whose stone inscriptions outshine your wax tablets. Your village, once united by your signs, splinters farmers hoard, warriors ignore omens, as early laws in Athens suggest. The human toll is clear. Kleon, now a seer, struggles to teach his own apprentice. His predictions doubted. Lysandra, weaving to survive, no longer seeks your counsel. Yet resilience persists. Villages like Lefkandi adopt councils, their decisions etched in stone, echoing your mediations. Your augury shapes early Losdraco's codes in 621 BCE, use witnesses like your omens observers. Women like Lysandra, once augury's supplicants, join communal votes, as seen in later inscriptions. Myths of bird omens, woven into Homer's tales, transform your work into divine lore. Your sky watching, a survival tool, becomes Apollo's, eagles or Zeus, hawks, inspiring poets. Your methods reading flights, noting winds, persist in sailors' lore, guiding classical ships. Augury's legacy lies in Greece's trust in signs, from oracles to stars, shaping its cultural dawn. Today, your story mirrors our search for meaning in uncertainty. Bird omens, like modern data or forecasts, guide decisions but falter under doubt. Your adaptability in reading new signs, teaching Kleon's resilience amid change. Climate shifts and social divides echo your challenges, pushing us to balance tradition with reason. As you watch the owl vanish into the night, you reflect on the signs that steered a world now gone. Their legacy endures in every prediction we make, every choice we weigh. What omens will we seek when our own skies grow unclear? The fates weave daily textile labor in Spartan households as you sit in a Spartan courtyard around 700 BCI. The steady clack of a loom echoes through the morning air, mingling with the scent of wool and olive oil. In myth, the fates spin the threads of destiny, but you, a woman in a Spartan household, weave the textiles that clothe your family and uphold the city's austere order. Your work, often overlooked, is the backbone of Sparta's economy, producing cloaks for warriors and linens for trade. This is no divine tapestry, but a story of daily labor, where each thread you spin binds your household to Sparta's rigid society. Picture yourself at an upright loom, its warp weighted with clay stones, a design inherited from Minoan Crete. Sparta, in the archaic period, relies on wool from sheep grazed in Laconia's hills and flax from nearby fields. You'd card wool with bone combs, spinning it into thread with a clay whirl, or weave linen for tunics worn by Spartan men training in the Agoge. Archaeological finds, like loom weights from Mycenaean, confirm women's central role in textile production. Your cloths, simple, durable clothes, citizens and helots, the enslaved laborers who farm Sparta's lands. Your day begins at dawn, washing wool in a stream or dyeing it with madder, root for a muted red. The work is relentless. A single cloak takes days. Its tight weave, a mark of skill. You'd barter surplus cloth at Sparta's agora, trading for grain or pottery, as Spartan currency was minimal. Inscriptions from the period, though sparse, mention women's contributions to household wealth, tying your loom to the city's survival. Your textiles, practical yet vital, support Sparta's militaristic ethos. Imagine Alcestis, a young mother teaching her daughter to spin, her hands steady despite years of labor. Or Thera, an elderly helot woman whose coarse weaves clothe her peers. Their lives, marked by worn fingers in skeletal remains, reflect the toil of textile work. Spartan women, free but bound by duty, manage households while men train their looms a quiet power. You'd share stories during weaving, your voices weaving community as much as cloth dot. Yet this labor rests on a fragile balance. Sparta's reliance on helot labor, as seen in land records, breeds tension. Rebellions simmer, threatening fields that supply your wool. Droughts, hinted at in pollen records, shrink flax harvests as you thread your loom under the midday sun. A question lingers. Can your textiles, binding Sparta's households, withstand the strains of a society built on conquest and control? You're back in the Spartan courtyard, the loom's rhythm steady as you weave wool under a fading sky. Circa 650 BCE, the fates' mythic spinning of life's threads mirrors your work. But your reality is grounded in the daily grind of producing textiles that sustain Sparta's households and economy. As a woman in this militaristic society, your loom is both duty and power, clothing warriors and helots while fueling trade. Yet, as you knot another thread, you feel the weight of a system strained by scarcity and the simmering unrest of those it exploits. Your craft is meticulous. You'd spin wool into fine thread, dyeing it with plant-based husmadar for red, woad for bluebee, for weaving it into cloaks or blankets. Spartan textiles, plain to reflect austerity, are durable, suited for harsh winters or battle. Archaeological evidence, like spindle whorls from Laconia, shows household production on a large scale. Your cloth clothes Spartan citizens, but also helots, whose labor in fields provides your raw materials. You'd trade surplus at markets, exchanging a bolt of linen for oil or barley. As Sparta's iron bars limit coinage, the people around you bring this to life. Alcestis, now skilled, weaves intricate borders, her patterns a rare flourish in Spartan simplicity. Thera, the helot, produces coarser cloth, her work taxed by Spartan overseers. Their lives bear labor's mark. Skeletal remains show wrist strain from spinning. Your household, like others, is a hub women and helots weave together, sharing looms and stories. Spartan women, managing estates while men train, hold authority, as seen in later texts like Xenophon's. Their textiles, a currency of influence, but tensions simmer. Helots, outnumbering Spartans, chafe under oppression, as hinted in early revolts. Like the Mycenaean wars, your wool supply falters as fields suffer from drought, evidenced by shrunken harvests in soil records. Trade with cities like Corinth grows competitive. Their pottery floods markets, outshining your cloth. Spartan elites, demanding more textiles for tribute, as noted in temple inventories, strain your output. You notice Thera's quiet resentment, her hands weaving for masters who give little back. Your loom holds Sparta together, but its threads are fragile. A poor harvest or helot uprising could disrupt your work, and Spartan rigidity prioritizing war over commerce limits markets. You teach Alcestis to mend flaws in cloth, but the flaws in society feel harder to fix. As you fold a finished cloak, under starlight, a question nags. Can your textiles, weaving Sparta's strength, endure the growing cracks in its social and economic fabric? The Spartan courtyard is still now, your loom silent under a moonlit sky, circa 600 BCE, as a woman weaving textiles. You've clothed a city famed for its warriors, your threads mirroring the fates' mythic tapestry. But Sparta's world frays, its reliance on helot labor and rigid ways unraveling the economy your cloth sustained. Your work, once binding households, now faces scarcity and rebellion. Its legacy woven into a Greece shifting toward new powers. The fates' threads, like yours, spin a story of resilience amid decline. Sparta's strength wanes as helot revolts. Like the Second Mycenaean War around 650 BCE, disrupt fields, leaving your wool scarce. In pollen records shows droughts toll, shrinking flax for linen. Your loom produces less. Trade falters as Athens and Corinth dominate markets with pottery and oil, as seen in amphory finds. Spartan elites, hoarding cloth for tribute, as temple records show, leave households like yours stretched thin. Helots, like theraweave, under duress, their resentment fueling uprisings that shake Sparta's core. The human cost is stark. Alcestis, now a mother, weaves to feed her family, her hands worn from years at the loom. Thera, aging, produces coarse cloth for helots, her labor unvalued. Skeletal remains reveal strained joints, a testament to their toil. Yet, resilience endures. Smaller households, like those in a Mycenaean, adapt, weaving for local barter. Your technique spinning, dyeing persist, influencing classical Greek textiles, as seen in Athenian patterns. Spartan women's authority, managing estates, shapes later laws, granting women property rights. As noted in Plutarch. The Fates myth elevates your labor, turning looms into symbols of destiny. Your textiles, practical yet vital, become metaphors. In poetry, weaving order from chaos. Your work's legacy lies in Greece's economy, where cloth remains a trade staple, as seen in 5th century market records. Spartan austerity, rooted in your plain weaves, shapes its enduring image. Today, your story reflects systems built on labor's fragile threads. Textile production, like modern industries, depends on exploited workers and finite resources, vulnerable to disruption. Your adaptability weaving through scarcity, teaching Alcestis resilience amid strain. As you fold your last cloth, the night cool, you reflect on the threads that held Sparta. Their legacy lives in every fabric we wear, every economy we sustain. What will our own looms weave when the world we know unravels? Hermes paths, messenger networks, and postal systems of antiquity as you tread a dusty path through the hills of Attica around 600 BCE. The sun warms your back, and the weight of a clay tablet presses against your satchel. In myth, Hermes, the swift-footed messenger god, carries divine words, but you, a runner in Athens' fledgling postal system, carry the mundane yet vital messages that bind city-states. Your role is no epic quest, but a grueling task of delivering news, trade deals, and decrees across rugged terrain. This is the story of ordinary feet-forging networks that shaped Greece's communication and commerce. Picture yourself pausing at a village spring, your sandals worn from days of travel. Archaic Greece, recovering from the Mycenaean collapse, relies on runners like you to link Athens, Corinth, and Thebes. You carry tablets inscribed with wax or papyrus scrolls, detailing crop prices or military orders. Archaeological finds, like seal stones from Pylos, suggest early record-keeping, while later inscriptions from Athens mention couriers. Your messages, often verbal, to save weight, relay a merchant's deal or a call for allies, tying villages to bustling agora as your day begins at dawn. Memorizing a message from an Athenian scribe, perhaps a tax demand or a trade agreement with Aegina, you'd run 20 miles, resting at way stations like those near Megara, simple shelters with water and bread. Speed matters. A day's delay could spoil a deal. You navigate by landmarks, olive groves, mountain ridges, learned from older runners. Your deliveries, fuel trade. Ships carry goods based on your news, as seen in amphorae, stamped with trademarks found across the Aegean. The human story grounds your work. Imagine Nicostratos, a young runner training to outpace you, his legs strong but untested, or Irene, a scribe's wife who prepares your meals, her hands stained with ink. Their lives, like yours, bear the toll of labor. Skeletal remains show strained ankles from running. Villages depend on you. Farmers await price updates. Elders need alliance news. You'd share stories at way stations, your words weaving trust across city-states, much like Hermes' mythic role. Yet your paths are precarious. Bandits, hinted at in fortified outposts, stalk lonely roads, and storms turn trails to mud. The post-Mycenaean recovery strains resources. Fewer goods mean fewer messages as trade slows. As you rest under an oak, a tablet heavy in your hands, a question lingers. Can your network of paths and words hold Greece together as rivalries and scarcity threaten to tear it apart? You're back on the winding paths of Attica, your satchel lighter now as you deliver a message to Corinth, circa 550 BCE. Hermes, the mythic messenger, flits through tales, but your reality as a runner is one of sweat and stamina, carrying words that knit Greece's city-states into a fragile web of trade and diplomacy. Your steps, tracing routes from Athens to Sparta, sustain a network vital to a recovering, archaic world. Yet, as you climb a rocky hill, the strain of dwindling resources and rising tensions weighs on you, hinting at cracks in the system you uphold. Your work demands endurance. You'd carry a wax tablet or memorize a merchant's order perhaps for oil from Samos, running 30 miles a day. Way stations, like those near Argos, offer shade and barley porridge, their stone benches worn by countless runners. Archaeological evidence, such as inscriptions from Delphi, shows organized couriers linking oracles to cities. You'd navigate by stars or coastal cliffs, avoiding bandits who lurk on quiet trails, as hinted in fortified posts. Your messages drive commerce. A trade deal you deliver fills ships, as seen in pottery shards stamped with merchant seals. The people around you bring this to life. Nicostratos, now faster, relays urgent military summons, his breath ragged from sprinting. Irene, packing your satchel with bread, shares news of Athens' agora, her voice sharp with worry over scarce grain. Their lives, marked by worn joints in skeletal remains, reflect the toll of your trade. Villages rely on your speed. A delayed message could stall a harvest or weaken an alliance. You'd swap tales at firesides, your stories of Theban markets or Spartan drills, fostering trust, echoing Hermes' role as a connector. But the network frays, droughts evident in soil records, shrink harvests, reducing trade messages. Athens' growing power, seen in its pottery flooding Corinth, sparks rivalries. Your roots carry tense, diplomatic pleas. Social divides grow. Elites demand priority. Messages, while farmers like Erin's kin wait for market news. Banditry rises, and storms, worsened by post-Thera climate shifts, slow your paths. You notice fewer runners. Some, like Nicostratos, take safer jobs as scribes. The system leans on you, but resources dwindle and trust falters. Your runs, a lifeline, teeter on collapse. A lost tablet or a misspoken word could spark a feud, as later Greek tales of broken oaths suggest. You teach Nicostratos to read landmarks, but the paths feel less certain. As you pause under starlight, your legs aching, a question nags. Can your network of messages endure the growing rivalries and scarcity threatening Greece's fragile unity? The Attic path lies quiet now, your satchel empty as you rest under a moonlit sky, circa 500 BCE as a runner. You've carried messages that bound Greece's city-states, but the archaic world shifts, its networks fraying under war and change. Hermes' mythic speed lives in stories, but your reality, delivering trade deals and decrees, faces collapse as Athens and Sparta vie for power. Your paths, once vital, fade as new systems rise, leaving a legacy of connection in a fractured Greece. The archaic recovery stalls as Persian threats loom, dated to the 490s BCE with the Battle of Marathon. Archaeological evidence, sparse markets, fortified walls shows trade's decline. Your messages, once fueling commerce, dwindle. Drought, seen in pollen records, cuts harvests, leaving fewer deals to carry. Athens' navy, funded by silver mines, overshadows your roots, as seen in trireme records. Way stations stand empty, their hearths cold, and bandits, emboldened by unrest, stalk your trails. Inscriptions from Athens' agora mention couriers, but scribes and ships now carry urgent news. The human toll is heavy. Nicostratos, now limping, trains no apprentices, his roots abandoned. Erin, her hands worn, feeds fewer runners. Her village, strapped by taxes. Skeletal remains, showrunners, strained legs, a testament to your toil. Yet, resilience endures. Coastal towns like Aegina maintain local couriers, bartering news for fish. Your methods, memorizing routes, reading star-shape classical Greece's heralds, seen in Athens' diplomatic missions. Women like Erin, managing supplies, influence later market roles. As noted in 5th century texts, Hermes' myth transforms your labor into divine feats, your dusty paths into tales of swift gods. Your network, though fading, seeds Greece's communication paved. Roads and triremes build on your roots, as seen in Persian war logistics. Your work proves connection's power, uniting cities through words, not swords. Today, your story mirrors our fragile networks. Your runs, like modern communication systems, falter under strain-disrupted trade, political divides. Your adaptability, new paths, sharing news teaches resilience amid chaos. As you rest, the stars above Attica unchanged, you reflect on the messages that bound a world now dust. Their legacy lives in every signal we send, every link we forge. What paths will we tread when our own networks falter? Dionysus vines, vineyard maintenance in rural Atticas. You walk the terraced hills of rural Attica around 600 BCE. The air carries the sweet temps of ripening grapes. In myth, Dionysus bestows wine as a divine gift. But you, a vine dresser, know. The truth lies in the toil of tending vineyards that sustain Athens' economy and rituals. Your hands, stained with soil, prune vines to yield the fruit that fills amphory and fuels trade. This is no godly revelry, but a story of labor, patience, and the quiet craft of cultivating vines in a land both fertile and unforgiving. Picture yourself among rows of grapevines, their roots deep in Attica's rocky soil. Vines, domesticated in the Near East by 4000 BCE, thrive here, their growth shaped by your care. You'd prune shoots with a bronze sickle, tying vines to wooden stakes to catch the sun. Archaeological finds, like grape seeds in Piraeus and wine presses at Marathon, show viticulture's role in Attica's wealth. Your grapes, pressed into wine, fill clay jars traded to Egypt or Corinth, returning with tin or pottery, as seen in shipwreck cargoes. Your day begins at dawn, checking vines for mildew or pests, a task demanding keen eyes. You'd dig trenches to channel scarce rainwater, building terraces with limestone to prevent erosion. Harvests, timed by the moon's phases, involve whole villages, men, women, children treading grapes in stone basins. Inscriptions from Athens' agora mention wine taxes, tying your vines to the city's coffers. Your wine, used in festivals like the Dionysia, honors the god while feeding markets. The human story grounds your work. Imagine Theron, a young farmer learning to graft vines, his hands blistered from digging, or Klymene, a widow crushing grapes, her wine bartered for grain, their lives, marked by worn joints in skeletal remains, reflect the labor's toll. Communities share presses and labor, singing harvest songs that echo Dionysus myths. Your vineyard, small but vital, supports Athens' trade. Its wine, a currency stronger than Sparta's iron bars. Yet, viticulture is fragile. Droughts, hinted at in pollen records, parch your vines, and poor harvests spark hunger. Athens' growing ambition, seen in its expanding navy, demands more wine, straining your fields. As you prune under the midday sun, a question lingers. Can your vineyards, feeding Athens' rise, withstand the pressures of scarcity and the city's relentless demands? You're back among the vines of Attica, the sun warming your shoulders as you tie shoots to stakes. Circa 550 BCE, Dionysus' mythic revels inspire songs. But your reality as a vine dresser is one of sweat and skill, coaxing grapes from rocky soil to fuel Athens' trade and rituals. Your vineyard, a patchwork of terraces, is a lifeline, its wine-filling amphorae that sail across the Aegean. Yet, as you crush grapes underfoot, the scent sharp in the air, you sense the strain of a land pushed to its limits by drought and ambition. Your work is relentless. You'd inspect vines for blight, cutting away withered leaves, and mend terraces to hold rainwater. Grapes, harvested in late summer, are trodden in stone presses, their juice fermenting in clay jars. Archaeological evidence, like wine residues in Piraeus amphorae, shows your wines reached traded to Samos or Tyre for bronze or dyes. You'd barter surplus at the agora, your wine securing oil or barley, as inscriptions note wine as a tax. Payment. Your vineyard supports Athens' navy, its ships carrying your jars to fund wars, as seen in early trireme records. The people around you breathe life into this. Theron, now adept, grafts vines to boost yields, his knowledge vital as rains falter. Klymene the widow oversees the press, her wine prized by merchants. Their lives, bare labors, mark skeletal remains, show strained backs from hauling baskets. Villages unite for harvests, their songs echoing Dionysus festivals like the Anthesteria, where your wine flows. Women like Klymene, managing small vineyards, hold sway, their role hinted at in later Athenian laws granting women trade rights. But the vines are vulnerable. Droughts, evident in soil records, shrank harvests, and pests ruin clusters. Athens' growing power, seen in its pottery flooding Corinth, demands more wine, but fields suffer from overplanting. Social tensions rise. Elites hoard your wine for rituals, while farmers like Theron struggle, as Agora records show uneven distributions. Pirate raids, noted in coastal fortifications, threaten trade ships, and the Persian threat looms, diverting resources. You notice Klymene bartering less, her jars fewer. Your vineyard, a symbol of plenty, teeters on scarcity. A bad season could starve families, and Athens demands strain your soil. You teach Theron to save water, but the land feels weary. As you seal a wine jar under twilight, a question nags. Can your vines, weaving Athens' wealth, endure the growing pressures of a city chasing dominance in a parched land? The Attic vineyard lies hushed now, its vines stark under a starlit sky. Circa 500 BCE, as a vine dresser, you've tended grapes that fueled Athens' rise. But the archaic world shifts, its trade and fields strained by war and want. Dionysus' mythic wine flows in tales, but your reality, pruning, pressing. Bartering faces collapse as Persia's shadow looms and soil falters. Your vines, once Athens' lifeblood, wither, their legacy woven into a Greece reborn through resilience and adaptation. The Persian Wars, beginning around 490 BCE, disrupt Attica. Archaeological evidence burned farms, empty presses shows, vineyards ravaged, droughts seen in pollen records. Parch your vines. Grape seeds from Marathon are smaller, yields thin. Trade falters as ships carrying your wine face Persian blockades, as noted in Herodotus. Athens' navy, funded by your wine's taxes, grows, but demands outstrip supply. Farmers like Theron abandon fields for battle, and Klymene, her press, idle, barters scraps to survive. As Agora records show dwindling wine stocks, the human toll is stark. Theron, scarred from Marathon, tends fewer vines, his hands trembling. Klymene, aging, teaches her daughters to press grapes, her jars now local. Skeletal remains show hunger's grip, reflecting lean years. Yet resilience endures. Villages, like Eleusis, maintain small vineyards, bartering wine for fish. Your techniques crafting, terracing survive, shaping classical viticulture, as seen in Athenian amphorae across the Mediterranean. Women like Klymene, managing harvests, influence later market roles. As noted in 5th century laws, Dionysus' myth elevates your labor, turning vines into divine gifts. Your wine, a practical staple, becomes a symbol in festivals, its flow in the Dionysia uniting Athens. Your work's legacy lies in Greece's economy. Wine trade fuels city-states, as seen in port records. The vineyard's grit, not its glory, shapes history, proving labor's power in scarcity. Today, your story mirrors our fragile systems. Vineyards, like modern agriculture, face climate shifts and overexploitation. Your adaptability. Vines, sharing presses teaches resilience amid crisis. As you seal your last jar, the night cool, you reflect on the vines that fed a city. Their roots endure in every bottle we pour, every economy we sustain. What will our fields yield when war and want test our own harvest? Apollo's shrine, administrative duties at the Delphic oracle. As you walk the stone paths of Delphi around 600 BCE, the scent of laurel and incense drifts from Apollo's shrine, high on Mount Parnassus. In myth, the Delphic oracle speaks Apollo's will, but you, a temple scribe, manage the mundane tasks that keep this sacred site running. Your work recording offerings, scheduling pilgrims, and tallying resources sustains Delphi's influence across Greece. This is no divine vision, but a story of ledgers, labor, and the quiet bureaucracy that underpins a spiritual hub. Picture yourself in a small chamber near the temple, scratching a wax tablet with a stylus, noting a merchant's gift of oil. Delphi, a pan-Hellenic sanctuary, draws pilgrims from Athens to Sparta. Their offerings, gold, pottery, livestock funding priests and oracles. Archaeological finds, like inscribed dedications and bronze tripods, show the wealth you manage. You schedule consultations with the Pythia, the oracle's priestess, ensuring nobles and farmers alike wait their turn. Your records, etched on stone or clay, track grain for priests or repairs for the altar. Tying your desk to Greece's spiritual pulse, your day begins at dawn. Checking storerooms filled with amphorae and votive statues, gifts from city-states, seeking Apollo's favor. You'd coordinate with priests to prepare rituals, burning time on the altar, and with laborers cleaning sacred springs. Inscriptions from Delphi, like the sacred oracle's accounts, detail your role, tallying donations, paying masons, or sending envoys to allied cities. Your work supports trade. Delphic neutrality fosters markets. As seen in pottery from Corinth, found on-site, the human story grounds your labor. Imagine Cleisthenes, a young scribe, learning to balance accounts, his fingers smudged with wax. Or Irene, a temple worker, preparing laurel crowns, her hands worn from weaving. Their lives, marked by repetitive strain in skeletal remains, reflect the toil behind Delphi's glory. Pilgrims, from kings to shepherds, rely on your efficiency to access the oracle. Their questions about war, crops, or marriage shaping. Greece's decisions. You'd share meals with priests, discussing Athens' latest offering. Your words knitting a community. Yet Delphi's influence is fragile. Rival oracles in Dodona gain favor, and droughts, hinted at in pollen records, shrink offerings as harvests fail. As you seal a tablet under lamplight, a question lingers. Can your careful records and rituals sustain Delphi's power in a Greece strained by scarcity and ambition? You're back in the Delphic scribe's chamber, the flicker of an oil lamp, casting shadows on your wax tablet. Circa 550 BCE, Apollo's oracle draws pilgrims seeking divine guidance. But your role as a scribe is the unseen backbone, managing offerings, scheduling the Pythia's sessions, and ensuring the shrines. Operations hum. Your ledgers, not prophecies, keep Delphi's influence alive, tying city-states through bureaucracy. Yet, as you tally a dwindling stock of grain under the evening's glow, you sense the strain of a Greece where rivalry and scarcity threaten this sacred hub. Your work is meticulous. You'd record a Spartan delegation's bronze tripod or a farmer's sack of barley, each gift logged on clay or stone. Inscriptions from Delphi, like the treasury of the Athenians, show your role in tracking wealth. Gold for statues, oil for lamps. You'd assign pilgrims slots with the Pythia, prioritizing nobles but ensuring fairness, a system echoed in later Greek administrative texts. You coordinate laborers, repairing the temple's limestone steps, worn by thousands of feet, and priests burning laurel for rituals, their smoke curling skyward. The people around you bring this to life. Kleon, now skilled, checks amphory for leaks, his precision vital as donations thin. Irene, weaving ritual garlands, shares tales of pilgrims' hopes war victories, fertile fields, their lives, marked by worn hands, in skeletal remains, reflect the grind of temple work. Delphis neutrality fosters trust. Athens and Sparta, rivals, meet here, their envoys relying on your records to seal alliances, as seen in early diplomatic inscriptions. You'd dine with priests, discussing Corinth's latest gift, your words, shaping Delphi's role as Greece's mediator. But cracks appear, droughts evident in soil records, cut harvests, reducing offerings. A farmer's single goat replaces last year's herd. Rival oracles, like Dodana's, draw pilgrims, and Athens' growing navy, funded by silver mines, shifts power, as seen in port records. Social tensions simmer, elites demand quicker oracle access, while locals, like Irene, struggle, their families, hungry. Political rivalries, partas, caution. Athens' ambitions train Delphi's neutrality. As inscriptions hint at contested dedications, your ledgers hold Delphi together, but scarcity threatens. A misrecorded gift could spark a city-state's ire, as later tales of disputed oracles suggest. You teach Kleon to double-check tallies, but resources dwindle. As you etch a donation under starlight, a question nags. Can your careful administration preserve Delphi's sacred role amid Greece's growing divisions and want? The Delphic shrine lies quiet now, its altar cold under a moonlit sky, circa 500 BCE as a scribe. You've managed the offerings and schedules that made Apollo's oracle a beacon. But Greece shifts, its city-states torn by Persian wars and internal strife. The mythic Pythias visions fade before your reality ledgers, and labor undone by scarcity and ambition. Delphi's influence wanes, its bureaucracy unable to hold back the tides of change. Yet your work seeds a legacy of order in a new Greece. The Persian Wars, starting 490 BCE, disrupt Delphi. Archaeological evidence, sparse offerings, damaged. Treasuries shows a sanctuary strained. Droughts, seen in pollen records, shrink harvests, leaving pilgrims with little to give. Clay lamps replace gold ones. Athens' rise, fueled by Laurian mines, overshadows Delphi, as seen in naval records diverting trade. Your records, once etched on stone, dwindle. Inscriptions note fewer dedications as city-states hoard wealth for war. The Pythias sessions, once frequent, slow, and rival oracles like Dodana gain favor. The human toll is stark. Kleon, now weary, tallies meager grain sacks, his hands cramped from writing. Irene, her garlands sparse, feeds fewer laborers, her family lean. Skeletal remains show hunger's grip, reflecting hard years. Yet resilience endures. Local villages maintain small altars, bartering oil for rituals. Your systems tracking, gifts, scheduling, oracles shape classical Greece's bureaucracies, as seen in Athens' council records by 450 BCE. Women like Irene, managing supplies, influence civic roles, as noted in later inscriptions. Apollo's myth elevates your work, turning ledgers into divine order. Your administration, practical, yet vital, becomes the oracle's mystique, inspiring poets like Pindar. Your methods, record-keeping, neutral mediation, persist in Greece's assemblies, shaping democratic Athens. Delphi's role as a hub built on your labor proves communication's power in uniting rivals. Today, your story mirrors our fragile systems. Your ledgers, like modern data networks, falter under crisis war, scarcity. Your adaptability, less teaching Kleonist teaches resilience amid change. As you close your tablet, the stars bright above Parnassus, you reflect on the shrine that guided a world now fading. Its legacy lives in every record we keep, every system we sustain. What order will we build when our own sanctuaries falter? Hephaestus, forge, metallurgy, and tool-making in ancient Greece's, you stand in a smoky workshop near Athens around 600 BCE. The clang of hammer on bronze echoes, and the heat of the forge stings your skin. In myth, Hephaestus crafts divine armor, but you, a metalsmith, shape the tools, sickles, chisels, swords that sustain Greece's fields, homes, and wars. Your work, grounded in sweat and skill, forges the backbone of a recovering, archaic society. This is no godly tale, but a story of fire, metal, and the quiet labor that drives Athens' rise. Picture yourself stoking a clay furnace, its bellows pumping air to melt copper and tin into bronze. Metallurgy, refined since the Bronze Age, thrives in Attica's workshops, fueled by or from Laurian mines. You'd pour molten metal into clay molds, crafting a plowshare or an axe blade, cooled in water to harden. Archaeological finds, like bronze tools from Corinth and slag heaps in Athens, show your craft's scale. Your tools, sickles for farmers, ADSs for carpenters-enabled trade, as ships carry them to Samos or Tyre. Returning with grain or dyes, your day begins at dawn, hauling charcoal to feed the forge, its glow lighting your cramped shop. You'd hammer a blade, checking its edge with calloused fingers, then barter it at the agora for oil or wool. Inscriptions from Athens mention smiths supplying armies, tying your forge to the city's power. Your tools shape everything from olive presses to trireme fittings, supporting a navy that rivals Sparta's. As seen in early shipyard records, the human story grounds your labor. Imagine Pylos, a young apprentice learning to temper bronze, his hands scarred from sparks, or Thalia, a merchant's wife, trading your tools, her voice sharp in the market. Their lives, marked by burns and strain in skeletal remains, reflect the forge's toll. Communities rely on you. Farmers need your sickles, warriors your swords. You'd share wine with neighbors, discussing a new mold, your craft knitting Athens' economy. Yet metallurgy is fragile. Laurian's mines, overworked, yield less, and trade routes falter as Persian threats loom. Droughts, hinted at in pollen, records shrink charcoal supplies. As you shape a chisel under lamplight, a question lingers. Can your forge, fueling Athens' strength, withstand the scarcity and rivalry threatening Greece's fragile recovery? You're back in the Athenian workshop, the forge's heat searing as you hammer bronze into a sickle. Circa 550 BCE, Hephaestus' mythic forge sparks divine creations. But your reality as a metalsmith is one of grit, crafting tools that drive Greece's farms, ships, and wars. Your workshop, filled with slag and smoke, powers Athens' economy, its tools traded across the Aegean. Yet, as you pour molten metal under flickering light, you sense the strain of a world where scarce and growing tensions test your craft's limits. Your work is precise. You'd smelt copper from Lorien and tin from afar, mixing them in a clay crucible to cast a sword or plow, cooling the bronze in water. You'd hammer it sharp, checking for cracks. Archaeological evidence, like tool caches in Piraeus and Furnace, remains in Corinth, shows your craft's reach. Your sickles reap barley, your chisels carve temple stones, and your swords arm Athens' hoplites, as seen in early armory records. You'd trade tools at the agora, securing oil or pottery, linking your forge to ports like Chalcis. The people around you bring this to life. Pylos, now skilled, tempers blades, his eyes sharp for flaws. Thalia, trading your tools, negotiates with merchants from Samos, her hands calloused from hauling. Their lives, marked by burns in skeletal remains, reflect the forge's toll. Your workshop is a hub. Apprentices, traders, and laborers share sweat and stories. Athens' navy, growing with your fittings, challenges Sparta, as seen in inscriptions. You'd dine with Pylos, discussing a new mold, your craft binding the community. But the system frays. Lorien's mines deplete, and trade for tin slows as Persian wars loom, hinted at in disrupted shipwrecks. Droughts, seen in soil records, limit charcoal, dimming your forge. Social tensions rise. Elites demand swords for war, while farmers, like Thalia's kin, struggle, as agora records show uneven trade. Rival cities, like Corinth, flood markets with their tools, challenging your craft. You notice Pylos hoarding scraps, wary of shortages. Your forge, a lifeline, teeters on scarcity. A flawed blade could fail a farmer or warrior, as later tales of broken spears suggest. You teach Pylos to save fuel, but the mines dwindle. As you sharpen a chisel under starlight, a question nags. Can your tools, forging Athens' power, endure the growing scarcity and rivalry reshaping Greece? The Athenian workshop lies quiet now, the forge cold under a starry sky. Circa 500 BCE, as a metalsmith, you've crafted tools that armed and fed Athens. But the archaic world falters, strained by Persian wars and depleted resources. Hephaestus, mythic forge burns bright in tales, but your reality hammering bronze, shaping Greece's strength faces collapse as mines fail and rivals rise. Your tools, once Athens' backbone, fade, their legacy forged in a new Greece built on grit. An adaptation. The Persian Wars, starting for 90 BCE, disrupt Attica. Archaeological evidence abandoned, forges, scarce bronze shows metallurgies decline. Lorien's mines, overworked, yield less copper, and tin trade halts, as seen in empty shipwrecks. Your tools, vital for plows and swords, dwindle. Farmers, revert to wood, warriors to iron, as early armory records note. Athens' navy, funded by silver, overshadows your craft, redirecting wealth to ships, not forges. Droughts, evident in pollen records, cut charcoal, leaving your furnace dark. The human toll is stark. Pylos, now weary, crafts fewer tools, his hands scarred from years of sparks. Thalia, bartering rusted sickles, feeds a hungry family. Skeletal, Remains show burns and strain, reflecting your toil. Yet, resilience endures. Villages like Marathon forge iron locally, adapting to scarcity. Your techniques casting, tempering shape, classical smithing, as seen in Athenian armories by 450 BCE women like Thalia. Trading tools influence market roles, as noted in later inscriptions. Hephaestus myth elevates your labor, turning forges into divine workshops. Your tools, practical yet vital, become symbols in poetry, arming heroes like Achilles. Your craft's legacy lies in Greece's technology. Iron plows and ship fittings build on your bronze, as seen in 5th century artifacts. Your workshop, a hub of grit, proves labor's power in scarcity. Today, your story mirrors our reliance on finite resources. Metallurgy, like modern industries, falters under depletion and conflict. Your adaptability, using less, or teaching Pylos teaches resilience amid crisis. As you bank the forge's ashes, the night cool, you reflect on the tools that built a city. Their legacy endures in every blade we shape, every system we sustain. What will our forges craft when resources and resolve run dry?